Let's see, is it record? Yeah, okay, I'm record. Okay, hello, this is the late July video chat. This is another one of those where I would just kind of prefer to hide until I have more videos out. Really thought I would, but since I'm doing the videos and the campaign, more things kind of popped up that just been draining all my time. So I'll have updates on the campaign quick. I'm not gonna make a separate video. There's nothing too critical. Rather, the critical stuff's going to get its own attention soon. Okay, the big news is the European Citizens Initiative should be opening up at the end of the month, so on Wednesday. As I understand it, I'm going to have a promotion video that's just been siphoning my time away from Game Dungeon, unfortunately. Going to have the website up and the guides up and everything, though. This one's simple enough that you're probably not even going to need a guide. Just do it carefully for those that are eligible because you only get one chance. Anyway, that'll all be on Wednesday. That'll have news on that. What? Yeah, and the European Citizens Initiative, this is one where getting the signatures is a long shot, but if we get them, that gives us so much potential power and a better position. Like that, I think it potentially ends this. Or I think it does end this if we get the signatures. So, but getting them's tricky. Let's see. Game campaign announcements. In Australia, the formal complaint by the legal law firm has been finalized. I've looked through it. It looks excellent. Covers just about everything. I'll look into see if I can make that public later. I want to check with them on that. If so, I'll post it somewhere. I don't know if they've submitted it yet, but it'll be pretty soon if they have. I've approved it and everything. So they're not going to need the testimony of the crew owners after all, because they looked at our petition that we had going in Australia, and that had over 10,000 signatures. So they said this is way better, according to the law firm, just from the numbers. So they thought including the testimony from the crew owners would just be like nothing compared to that. So I'm going with their judgment since they're the law firm. So again, this isn't new stuff people have to do. It's just stuff that's underway. The big stuff besides the European Citizens Initiative promotion, the big stuff I'm going to have to do is still in the UK. I'm still not sure what exactly we should do, but we should do something for next month. When the petitions reopen, we'll submit at least one more petition, maybe more. We might be able to get them to get an original revised response, in which case we might just focus everything on the expiration date instead. And the other thing is we need to get guides up and going for the Competition and Markets Authority, but I'm still in the dark what qualifies or not. So I may just send people blind into that. I mean, we'll give instructions, but it's possible some of the people giving complaints won't even qualify. It's just been so difficult to get straight information on it. So, but we'll put that in the guide saying, we're not 100% sure on this, but some people will qualify to file complaints with them. So this may just turn into like a best effort thing there. We'll see. Let's see. And yeah, that's it for the game campaign. Again, big news on that on Wednesday with the European Citizens Initiative. That'll have its own video. Next up, so yeah, if that's all you're watching for, you can go. Next up, Game Dungeon. I was really, really trying to get it out by around now, but making the video and doing the website and the guides for the European Citizens Initiative, which I wasn't sure when I was going to go up originally, kind of hijacked all that. I hate to say it, but it might be one more week. I think this is the longest Game Dungeon I've ever made. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the longest one is. I think maybe Phantasmagoria 2. And it's not because I'm covering everything in the game. I'm cutting out huge chunks, but there's just like everything that's in there. It's like I don't want to cut it out. This game, it's not as zany, but when I'm playing it, it's kind of reminding me a bit of Armed and Delirious. Not the art style or the zaniness, but just there's so many things like going through my head when I'm playing it that I'm just like, wow, you know. Whereas Armed and Delirious, it's just one thing after another in that game, and this is kind of like a tamer version of that. So I just didn't want to cut all this stuff. I think it's going to be somewhere between 70 and 80 minutes. So I'll get it done as soon as I can, though the promotion video is going to take priority, but I've done the recording for that. I was sweating profusely, and thankfully it doesn't show up too badly in the video, and I can kind of cheat some with green screen editing, but because I had to have the fan off, the windows shut, and the doors shut for sound purposes, and I don't have air conditioning. So I was just, I'm lucky I didn't faint doing that one. So it's recorded, but I have a whole bunch of editing to do on it. And, let's see. And I'm just warning people, after I get the promotion video out and after I get Game Dungeon out, I'm going to take a couple days off, like at least 3, maybe 4, just having fun, essentially, because I'm just going nutty. I'm not working the same hours I was earlier, but it's still like way too many. It's like every day there's like 30 things I have to do. So I want like, what is it called? Staycation for a few days. But that'll be after the video. Game Dungeon comes first, and the ECI comes first also. Okay. Oh, and yeah, this I meant to do last time. I completely forgot, but this time I'm doing it properly. The one person who helps me on the videos, Spencer Cardillo, actually he's helping on the next Game Dungeon. He usually helps me like trim down my lines because I usually have multiple takes, and he has a decent sense of which are the good ones, which should probably throw out. I mean, usually, but when he's available. Sometimes he's not, and I just do it myself. But it saves me time. Turns out he's another person who's gone and made his own game, and he was wondering if I could mention it. So yes, I'm happy to mention stuff on the video chats because they're a little more disposable than the regular videos. So his game that he's made is called Learn to Dodge. I'll put a link in the description and the chat in just a second. It's a kind of a simple game. Simple in concept. Here, I'll post the link here. The art style has what I would call a 90s shareware vibe. Like if this was just on a disc in the 90s, random shareware, I could see this being on there. So it definitely has like a kind of solo dev feel to it. I get the feeling all the focus it's basically a bullet hell game, but it tries to ease you into it, I think. So the entire focus is on just one bullet hell level after another. So unfortunately, that's not my kind of game, and I told him as much. But he's probably in the situation where like any exposure is good exposure. So this is not personally a game I would play, but it does look like one where if you are in the bullet hells, he's gone in on it. So like even vertical shooters. I mean, I want some stuff to dodge, but when they're just spazzing it all over the screen and there's just like the smallest little options to maneuver, I don't really like that part of it. I like the spectacle of like the big ships, missiles. I mean, I like some dodging, but not bullet hell level usually. Or mini bullet hell. That's okay. If there's like a spray, but it's only on like one side of the screen, you need to get over it. Okay, I could, and there's smaller things coming at you. That's fine, but what? Somebody's asking if they have permission for Freeman's Mind reference. It's on the website under the frequently asked questions, which maybe people don't even know what that means now. Anything you use a mind, as long as it like is even approaches fair use, is fine. So don't even worry about it. But yeah, so learn to dodge. And this is a completely unpaid promotion. This is just, he helps me with the videos, so I don't mind mentioning it for him. Yeah, even though it's not a game I would play or have an interest in playing, I'm afraid. We're spoiled for choice, but I imagine even bullet hell people might be spoiled for choice, but I'm not sure. I think the bullet hell games, is it? Tohau? I don't even know how to pronounce it. Those seem to dominate a lot of the bullet hell spectrum, though. I do like I do like a lot of vertical shooters, though. So, let's see. Any other announcements? Yeah, that's it for announcements. After this, I'm just gonna go back. I'm not even gonna do Game Dungeon. I'm gonna be sending stuff to the website because apparently most of the website stuff needs to be done by tomorrow. So I have to for the web guys to get it implemented in time. So I have to make sure like all the guides, everything's up for that. That's gonna be what I'm doing immediately after this. So this may not be the longest one, but we had some good questions, so we'll see. Okay, yeah, so I'll just start answering the questions then. Let's see. Well, move my windows around so I can see the chat as it comes. And I actually got a chance to look at them sometimes, so they won't all catch me completely off guard, like because I like kind of halfway did last time because I just didn't have enough time to look into it. Okay, well, the first one I wasn't sure how to answer, though. They're saying, Ross, why don't you tell us what kind of questions you enjoy being asked? Well, I still look at this thing as just a proof of life thing. I mean, if nobody cared, then I wouldn't even do this. So, but I find these monthly chats are kind of useful to, like, I'm not the most active person on, like, social media or anything like that. So these are kind of useful for people, like if there's a big question building up, or maybe there's a rumor going around that people want to ask me directly. This helps like diffuse all of that because I'm always fine with clarifying things. Like so, and then it also helps if it's been a long time since a video, it lets you know what's going on. That I'm not just twiddling my thumbs, or I was gonna say if I was, but I can't remember the last time I was just not doing anything. So it lets you know what's going on. Unfortunately, Game Dungeon's getting held up by Game Campaign, but I'm just trying my best to get it out as soon as I can. But this is going to be a good one. There's going to be plenty to look. This is another Game Dungeon where it just bounces around a lot of different topics on it too. So there's definitely food for thought in the next Game Dungeon. That's why it's so long. There's just too many things I wanted to show. But yeah, I guess in general, because I'm fine with just not being questioned for hours, In fact, I even talk about that concept in the next Game Dungeon. But I mean, I guess if I'm gonna be questioned, I guess the discussion. I don't know, discussions about the future, like kind of big picture stuff, like technology, like I find stuff interesting on the environment or societal shifts, that sort of thing. Let's see, some economic stuff. Well, games. Well, if I have an easy answer I was just thinking of general topics to talk about. It's movies to some extent. Okay. Will you stream on YouTube? There's somebody ask a live question. Sometimes I notice these, sometimes I don't. Will you make more shorts, YouTube format? I don't plan to make more shorts. Maybe one for the European Citizens Initiative. I can make short videos, but in fact, I want to. But not YouTube short style. I don't really have any plans for that. I mean, if I had a really great idea for it, I would do it, but I don't. So, I might be kind of aging myself out a bit. Hopefully, not too much. In that, I don't really want to make like lots of like low attention span stuff. I mean, I want to like keep people active, but YouTube Shorts seems like real focused, and stuff seems really focused on, stuff that's like what, a minute or under, 50 sec. Yeah, I think that's and I think that's definitely a valid medium. I mean, to, just get quick and to the point. Yeah, I think there's a viral video, like what, Half-Life in 60 seconds. So yeah, I think it's a good format, but I don't want like just that, and that's not really my strength, I'd say. So, the other question. Well, I wasn't playing the stream on YouTube. I mean, I usually do it on Twitch for two reasons. One, let's say something gets. I think YouTube's, at least in my experience, kind of pickier. So maybe I say something not entirely the perfect way, and then it's like it immediately kind of flags it, and then it affects the channel or something. I don't know. This hasn't happened, but I could see it happening. Well, no, maybe it did happen a little bit. Yeah, that's why to this day, it's probably safe to talk about it, but I just refer to the pandemic and as opposed to stating what the virus was, because just even mentioning that would just trigger things on YouTube. So I like having that separation. And plus, if one went down, I would want the other up, so it's kind of like a backup safety measure. And also, sometimes I do some last minute edits. I mean, these are real basic ones, because usually for most of the videos, I try to normalize the volume before I put it on YouTube, which just means that if it's like the whole thing is a little too quiet, I make the whole thing a little bit louder. Or sometimes the lighting was like pretty off, and then I fix it a little bit and then put it on YouTube. But how much more than that? Let's see. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. YouTube makes me a little more nervous these days. Okay, so let's see. So next question. How hard was it to move entirely to Poland? Well, I mean, at the time, all my friends had just kind of left one by one anyway, where I was living. So that I didn't really have that keeping me down. I guess, I mean, I sold my car because, and I had to kind of pack everything into just what I could take on the plane with, I think the limit was like 2 suitcases or so, 2 suitcases and carry-on, I think. I mean, I jettisoned some things that I could easily replace. Like, I brought my computer, but I jettisoned the computer case. So yeah, so space and weight were considerations. I might have jettisoned the power supply too. I forget. Because I knew I could, yeah, I think I did get a new power supply. But, well, anyway, so it was tricky just kind of shrinking down all my possessions into just what I could take in there. Though I had already moved multiple times. So I had some talent at this at just kind of crunching down everything I owned to what I can just carry in like a van or something like that. Or maybe even like a small, maybe I'm trying to remember if I moved before in the Ford Festiva I had. I can't remember if I maybe if I moved with everything I have just in the Ford Festiva. So I had some I did get rid of like 99% of my discs. Yeah, and just kind of gave them to a friend for kind of indefinite loan, which they're basically his now. Where I basically ripped every disc I own, like, it's DVDs, CDs, that sort of thing, and just put them on hard drives because I wasn't going to have the space and the weight to carry everything. So, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I'd say the hardest. One thing that I absolutely would say, I'd say you'd have to 100% have to budget it as part of the process, is my, I guess, then girlfriend and now wife had a friend who was a lawyer. And it's not like they needed to defend me or anything like that, but he just knew the process for going through immigration. And I can say with confidence between the two of us, like, my wife and I, we would not have made it with just our research. There were too many like small bureaucratic things we wouldn't have known about, or it would have been so close if we did. So I really needed his help. It's like, okay, we're going to this office now. We're going to this office. You need this form, this form. It was just a battery of things. So yeah, you should be prepared to get help with the immigration process, just like the paperwork of all of it, and and look up what all the requirements are. I knew a lot of them, and thankfully I brought the most important stuff. Like I needed to get a copy of my criminal or lack of criminal record from like the local police before I left. You know, you need to get a passport. I brought my birth certificate, you know, social security card. Oh yeah, I also had to bring bank records to show like I did have income coming in. So yeah, a lot of research. I'd say like, and for me personally, that was harder than the packing because yeah, the packing was more like a giant puzzle game and figure out what's most valuable to you. Whereas the paperwork, I mean, I might have no way of knowing it. And actually the first year I paid double taxes because I simply couldn't figure out how to do it otherwise. And now, knowing what I know now, there's actually only certain countries you can move to as an American if you're self-employed without getting double taxed, or more realistically, 1.5 taxed. Because unless there's a totalization agreement with that country, you still have to pay self-employment tax, which I think is 15% of your income. That's on top of, so you can pretty easily exclude your income from your regular income from being taxed in another country in the United States. If you know, it's still like a lot of paperwork hoops to jump through. But if you're self-employed, there's only some countries you can do that in. I mean, without renouncing your citizenship. That would be the other way. Thankfully, and yeah, Poland does have a totalization agreement with the United States, but only since 2009, and I moved. Well, yeah, I guess it was 2011. So it's like, man, that was just dumb luck that worked out. They're more now. They add them slowly, but yeah, I mean, I might have been able to afford it because I would have just been double taxed, because I would have had to pay tax in Poland and then still pay the extra 15% to the United States. So, but that's only if you're self-employed though. Like if you have an actual employer in the other country, you don't have to worry about that element of it. I mean, yeah, taxes are still a big chunk, but yeah, I mean, it's do a lot of research would be my advice, but it's not impossible. But the most impossible parts to me were just the paperwork and the bureaucracy out of all of it. Not impossible, but very daunting is the way I put it. Those were the hardest parts. Yeah, in fact, I think, what was it? I think I saw, was it like a Cracked article a while back where they were Cracked.com, where they were talking about moving, oh geez, what's the, I might be mixing up my guns here, but they were saying like the last time an American moved to Europe without like a mountain of paperwork, they were carrying an M40, for World War II. I might be getting the rifle wrong. Whatever the standard rifle was for infantry in World War II for the Americans. And I was thinking, yeah, that sounds about right, But yeah, just do lots and lots of research. So it's not impossible, but it's, yeah, in gaming terms, this would be like an RPG with like a lot of stats you need to get right, and you need to do like a lot of background research on how to make the character, and there's like a learning curve. It's like that. So, okay, so more questions. Is the YouTube demonetization just as bad as when you made the video, or have things changed? It feels roughly the same, though it seems pickier a bit. Like, I think, like, I don't know if I've had any, like, complete demonetizations in a while, but I have had ones where they're marked for reduced monetization. Like, what was it? Fahrenheit got flagged for that. I haven't checked in a while. There might be others. Like, I'm not sure. I've been kind of existing between the cracks a bit. I think the people who get hammered are the people like covering like independent news. Like if you cover a topic that the algorithm doesn't like, no matter like I've heard a lot of stories about this. Like no matter how objective you are, it almost doesn't matter sometimes. So and it can seem to be kind of arbitrary, like which topics are okay to talk about, which aren't. So, let's see. But yeah, I'm. You probably get better answers from probably younger YouTubers or people who've been or just kind of clawing their way up or something because like I don't think the income has dropped in half. Well, no, it sort of has actually. Sort of. Like I've noticed just on average, like Game Dungeon does way better than anything else now. Like with Freeman's Mind. See, I used to think it was more about the views. Like, so, but no, like 100,000 views on Game Dungeon is worth much more than 100,000 on like Freeman's Mind or just the game campaign stuff. So I'm not sure what the ratio is, but yeah, it varies wildly. I've noticed with how much it pays out. So I guess that's incentivizing me to do more Game Dungeon, which I am as soon as I can. Yeah, with okay, this is a question. I'm kind of. I couldn't answer it, but well, maybe I will. They're saying, do you hate all turn-based combat? Technically, no, but I kind of want to. I was going to explain this 100% in a future Game Dungeon. Though the future Game Dungeon I had that planned for would probably be. Honestly, it'd probably be next year at the earliest. So maybe I should just answer it now. No, the one game it did not bother me was Sky Hill. So I'll say that. It did not bother me one bit in that game. And they're asking, does this affect your affinity for card games? I guess what it is, with card games, it works. But yes, I dislike turn-based combat in pretty much every other game I've played. For card games, except maybe card games are a little different because half of what I like about card games, I mean like, digital ones is just kind of taking in all the art if I like the art style. So if I'm just really enjoying like the art and the mechanics of it, then I can kind of forget about the turn-based because I guess what I like with turn-based is I don't like to wait on anything. So if I'm just kind of engrossed in the whole process and it just moves as fast as I want it to, then that's not so bad. But and someone's saying, do you dislike the JRPG style or something like XCOM? Both. I mean, I just don't like waiting on the games. So, but card games, I'm kind of taking in the art like constantly if it's done well, and that can kind of be its own thing that I don't feel like I'm waiting so much as long as the AI is just moving along, so. What's the most radical sci-fi concept you've come across? Feel free to propose more in the chat here. I could be forgetting some, but I wrote down a few. I think the one that just kind of messed with my head the most. I mean, I grasp it, but it was a struggle to like stay up to speed with it. It was a book called Spaceland by Rudy Rucker, and it's all about the mathematical fourth dimension. Where I say mathematical because I usually tend to think of time as the fourth dimension, and I guess it could be, but like under math, it can be different also. And like I grasp the concept, but man, I just don't. It was kind of struggling to kind of keep up. Like the guy ends up, it's it's like it feels like climbing ice intellectually for me to like really keep up with everything that's happening fourth dimensionally. You know, because like unless you're just really latching onto it, or at least me, latching onto that in that moment, like I lose my grip, and then I have to like get back to where I was to kind of keep up. So yeah, I've read hardware, but I read software. I don't know if those by Rudy Rucker or not, but yeah, it's definitely a bit mind bending traveling in the fourth dimension as a 3-dimensional being with help. You know, there's a lot of that in the book in Spaceland. Yeah, I guess some runner ups I had, but yeah, but feel free to. Yeah, feel free to drop more. I mean, I was thinking just like really out there, most radical sci-fi cons. Yeah, ones that just kind of bent my mind a little bit. Uh, okay, I forgot the name of the book. I bet people can. It might have been like Blackout or something. No, I don't think that's it. I think it's a different book. Somebody might recognize it. This book threw a lot. This book was kind of all over the place. But one concept they brought up is when they in the book, they make extraterrestrial contact, but what they end up finding is that this is an advanced species, but it doesn't have consciousness the way we do. It's, you know, kind of like cells, just kind of, they just are kind of on their own sort of instincts and programming. And it sort of interprets us as kind of a virus because we're sending out these beams for communication and we're not an obvious ally. We're not an obvious enemy to them, or you know, or we're not food. So it just interprets us as a virus to kind of be destroyed. And this again, this book went all over the place because, like one thing I remember is, like, it's a book where they're trying to get me to take it seriously as science fiction, and I'm okay with that. But then one of the crew members is a vampire, so it's like, well. Okay, like I feel like we're mixing a little too much here. If we're gonna go all in on vampire stuff, okay, but that kind of needs to be your core thing, and just you need to have this other stuff in addition to that. Like, but if you're just dropping in like this is a vampire, so they have different mental capabilities, and I'm thinking, this. I mean, are we trying to be a little goofy here? Then that's fine, but. No, we're trying to be dead serious, but with the vampire, and that's not the focus. It's like they were trying to blend a little too much, in my opinion. But yeah, I kind of feel like if you have a vampire story and you want it to be serious, that kind of needs to be front and center where you're focused on things. So not just a throwaway point. Or yeah, if you're trying to be serious, if you just want to be goofy, yeah, go for it. You know, maybe somebody will recognize the name of the book. I definitely gave enough hints there. Yeah, or somebody's saying vampirism through technology. Right? No, they were a separate species, and the whole reason they had a vampire as part of the crew is because their mental abilities kind of exceeded humans in significant ways. So. Yeah, chat's saying vampires versus robots versus Nazis. Yeah, exactly. If that's the theme you're going for, that's fine. Like, you know, you have certain I don't think you're going to take your story tremendously seriously if that's your core theme. I mean, that theme is fine, but then you know, I'm expecting stuff more on Wolfenstein level than if. Well, Wolfenstein had. Yeah, what zombies and robots and Nazis. So I don't think they had vampires yet. You know that there's room for that. Yeah, there's room for that in a game like Wolfenstein. You know, so yeah, Blindside. Thank you. Somebody recognized it. Yeah, that sounds right. But yeah, the concept of alien life being advanced but not having consciousness. I thought, yeah, that's a pretty cool concept. It's, Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see that more in science fiction of alien life that's really alien. You know, not just they look different, but you know, they more or less behave like humans with quirks. I want stuff that's just kind of. I mean, those can be good too, but I like. To me, the best stuff is stuff that's just you have no idea what this life is up to or what it's doing or anything. Yeah, like I talked about that in the Star Trek video I did, where I felt like they undercut the Borg because the Borg started off so good, but then they just kept personifying them more and more, and I'm just thinking, well, now it's just another enemy. Well, who cares, you know? Whereas, I mean, what? Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I guess Hollywood could do better on that in general. Is have an AI, like a intelligent AI that's, you know, it's really kind of alien. You know, it's not like it's gone way beyond because Hollywood usually handles AI one of two ways. One, they either personify it, so you know it's like people except a robot, and the other is it like it's only operating off of its programming. You know, so it's just. But if it was an AI intelligence that emerged from that, it could be so damn weird compared to what we have. I'm not sure I've seen that in like a movie or science fiction. So like, I guess a little bit. I guess they had a little bit of that in, was it Her? I finally saw that movie. Skip big chunks of it, but it had some interesting concepts. Yeah, the end of Her is a little bit like that, but you could take it completely other directions because you don't have to explain what the AI is doing. You could just have like patterns that to leave it to the viewer to try and interpret it. You know, that's the way I would handle it. Yes. Okay. Somebody's mentioning Solaris. Solaris is weird, and I don't. I think the reason I didn't rank it higher is because I didn't quite follow everything of it, so it kind of threw me off. But I guess Sphere had a little bit. Yeah, Sphere had a little bit of overlap with Solaris. I think, like the book and the movie. And I guess another one I mentioned that's more fun was the movie Being John Malkovich, where the plot is that it's like the society that's like living inside his head. But I kept thinking of the scene where John Malkovich goes inside his own head, and I was thinking, like that's the part that lingered in my mind, like out of the entire movie, and yeah, Malkovich. I'll put a link to that in the description. That scene, and I was thinking, well, what's going on there exactly? Is what it got me thinking about. And I'm always, I mean, I guess it doesn't blow my mind in the same way, but I love it when it happens in science fiction or time paradoxes. And I should have looked this up before the chat. I remember a short story. I can sum it up in a few sentences quickly, where we've developed time travel, and this guy's going to go into the future for like an hour, and just, I think he's going to go like 10 years in the future, 20, something like that, and then come back and report. And I'm kind of spoiling the short story, but it's short. I loved it though. And so he goes into the future and he comes out and everything kind of looks the same except everything's abandoned. There's no people around or anything. There's just empty buildings, kind of look run down. It just looks like everything's abandoned. The entire time he just can't find like any traces of humanity or anything. And towards the end, there's these butterflies he keeps running into. And then he goes to like kind of sample one of them, and he finds that they're like kind of burning through his suit. They have like this acid effect. And then like he almost gets mobbed by them. And like, so he manages to escape from them and get back into his time capsule, and then Mick goes back in time and just reports to everything. And then while he's reporting, there's like some alarm going off. Apparently there's been like some breach of the quarantine or everything. One of the butterflies managed to get back onto the ship and has come back with them, or some of them. So basically the conclusion is these butterflies ended a sound of thunder, maybe. These butterflies ended humanity, and because they hitched a ride back on his time capsule. So it's a complete time paradox. And I love that sort of thing because it sort of makes you wonder, like, well, where did this come from then? So there's plenty of other time paradoxes too. So I like that sort of thing, you know, because like, well, where did the butterflies come from then? You know, because it's kind of self-manifested. Let's see. Okay, just more questions. Oh shoot, this is one I didn't mean to come back to. It said, you've mentioned before that a highly modifiable version of the crew would deserve the moniker of Dream Game, but barring that, what other games have or have been close to achieving Dream Game status? If I mentioned it before in a video and I'm forgetting about it, feel free to mention that in the chat. Well, I guess my concept of a dream game would be that I really like just the gameplay and the atmosphere, and I just keep wanting more of it, you know? So, and I feel like most, I guess here's the thing, like with most games, they don't, even if I really, really like them, I think you would have to hit like MMO length before it would like kind of scratch that itch for me sufficiently. And like the crew does kind of hit MMO size. And like with mods, you could basically, I feel like with mods, something like the crew with enough mods, it would inject reasons to kind of keep going back in there and kind of learning the entire feel of that world. And because when I really like a game world, I don't want to, what I want to do is just be familiar to it to the point where I just know everything there, you know, and that didn't happen to me with the crew because it's just too big. There's plenty of cities I don't, and if you could, with mods, you can inject stuff that would kind of add new life to it as opposed to like just driving. And that had the potential to kind of really build on it to a game you could just play really long time. Yeah, somebody's talking about, I played the first American, oh no, I haven't played American Truck Simulator. I played the first Euro Truck Simulator. The second one looks a lot better. And that's on my list of games to play. And that's one I was kind of holding off on until I can do it in full VR. And I've been kind of holding off on that until I have a better VR headset. So maybe I'll get to that. But I guess I mentioned before, like something that's something like PlanetSide 2 that's designed for single player that just is just like a full gigantic sci-fi war campaign. That would be kind of dream game material for me. But I mean, a lot of games, I mean, I like really atmospheric kind of Metroid style games, but they're usually with those aren't quite dream game because they're not big enough to the extent that I would want it. Like for the hit, I really like the Dungeon Siege kind of gameplay element to it. Let's see, what was another games I really enjoyed? They Are Billions. So I guess something like They Are Billions, but just you kind of keep going and like I wouldn't like by keep going. I don't mean just like you have the one level. It's more like you could keep expanding your empire, and then you would discover things as you keep expanding your empire. That sort of thing. What are some other ones I really like? Yeah, so I guess in order to be a dream game, it has to be like gameplay I really enjoy, but then it just keeps going and going and going, and then and not just keeps going, but there are discoveries you keep making as you keep going and going and going. So it's almost like it's just trying to envelop your world, because there are plenty of their games that are just enormous, but if it all becomes kind of the same sort of thing the more you keep going. So you need to find ways to keep making it like fresh. And usually I think it's, at least in terms of environments, maybe to some extent story and gameplay, it's usually only MMOs that kind of keep that going. But then vast majority of MMOs aren't necessarily my favorite kind of gameplay. So it's like they don't quite merge there. But yeah, I don't know. It's the sort of thing I have to, basically, I don't think about it too hard, because in order to hit dream game status, the game might be, oh, that was one I mentioned. Project Zomboid might be in that category. I still need to get around to playing it. Maybe I'll get to that once I take my break, once I'm done with the next videos. I plan to start Cyberpunk after that. But let's see. Did I ever join the Crew Unlimited Discord server? Yeah, I did, but I was just, I haven't spent much time on it. I mean, I was in contact with one of the developers on it, but that was about it. Let's see. And oh yeah, okay. I've had the same thought. They've talked about how Wild Run butchered the game's visuals. I was planning to discuss that in the follow-up before this whole game campaign happened. So yeah, no, I think my understanding is the emulator they're working on, that might mean we can get lighting mods for the crew, which would be amazing. So yeah, I mean, I've looked at both. I only know what the crew looked like before Wild Run just from videos, since I didn't play it till after that happened. My impression was there are moments when Wild Run looks better, but overall, the original lighting looks better. So if you're just going to take a place randomly, I'd rather have the original lighting, which I never had. Okay, more questions. Let's see. Oh yeah, the CrowdStrike, saying the CrowdStrike incident reminded me of my global blackout tangent from Deus Ex Invisible War. Any new thoughts on this, considering the direction of centralization? Well, it would be different than what I'm talking about, because CrowdStrike was a disruption, but it's software that happened. So, and it's not all systems, just about. Whereas my understanding is the right solar flare could basically fry most electronics. So we could still come back from that, but the disruption would just be apocalyptic, so, yeah, like, but like this, I didn't even notice I didn't even notice the effects of CrowdStrike except for just checking news, because everything I do was unaffected by it, at least directly. There might have been smaller stuff like where you don't feel the effects until later because of shipping chains, that sort of thing. But I mean, as for my thoughts on it, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of surprised this sort of thing doesn't happen. Yeah, somebody's saying CloudStrike. Yeah, I've heard a theory. This may have no backing at all, but one theory is that they laid off people and they left a lot of systems to AI. But this is not substantiated at all. That's just one theory I heard that sounds plausible, but I haven't had time to research. Well, I haven't had the time or incentive to research that, I guess. But no, I'm kind of surprised this sort of thing doesn't happen more often. And it kind of does with Windows on a smaller scale, because I've seen dozens of articles on updates that if I had been hit with them, they would have caused significant problems for me personally. Something that causes a blue screen or game compatibility or the frame affects frame rates or something. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of like having well-tested updates, and having a lot of quality control if you're going to make changes to something that's pretty important, like the operating system or really critical software, and then having an easy option to revert back to it. But yeah, so I try to do as much as I can on my computer, preparing for that sort of scenario where, like, if I got up and one day, okay, fine, the internet is down or something like that, then I would think, okay, well, then there's a whole hell of a lot of stuff I can still do on my computer. So I think some people, maybe even the majority of people now, see computers as kind of synonymous with internet usage. But I do a lot with computer that's completely independent of that, and I try to make as many things as I care about independent of that. Uh, so yeah, no, I think more this. I feel like this is part of me wants to see more of this sort of thing to sort of wake people up that we should have more kind of security backups for this kind of scenario, But oh yeah, somebody's saying, have you heard of Condo? It looks like that pie menu system. I need to try it out. Now that's something I haven't had time for that I absolutely do want to devote time towards. Uh, yeah, so Condo, it looks like what I was wanting for my, pie menu. That could help my productivity on several things. So yeah, I would love that. So I'll have to get on that. You've mentioned how you find new games to play, but I'm curious how you also find interesting movies and shows to watch. Well, it's a similar system where whenever I just run across something that sounds interesting to me, I just write it down, and then later try to look it up and get a copy of it. But how I do that, it's sometimes I see it can just vary. Sometimes I've gone to IMDb and I'm looking up something else, but then somebody else has like a recommended list, and out of curiosity, I'll click on it and I'll think, oh, these are good picks, and I'll see some that I haven't seen before. Or like sometimes I'll just look up like science fiction movies like 2023 or something, and just look through and then see if there's anything that sounds interesting to me that I missed, or like adventure movies, that sort of thing. I've gotten, I wouldn't say I consider it hopeless, but for comedy, I've gotten very picky from like mainstream Hollywood releases. I have 50 times the more confidence in finding good comedy just by some independent person on YouTube than from like a Hollywood movie now. It's rare. I'm not saying it's impossible. It can still happen, but it's just rare that, like, okay, I genuinely find this funny, from that. Whereas just some low budget person with good writing can just run circles around Hollywood in terms of comedy quality. Let's see. I've been meaning to kind of look into more of like a good Yeah, here's the thing I found part of me wants to look into a good recommendation engine, but in order to do that right, I would have to input like hundreds of movies and shows I've already seen for it to make a profile on me. And I don't mind doing that, but I don't want to have to keep doing that. So if I do that for like one service and then it goes down next year, well, then that's a lot of wasted time I had. So I would kind of need one that's kind of, I have some faith that they're going to stay up, and I'm not sure how to gauge that. So that's kind of held me back. Plus I have my list of stuff that I haven't seen already that I want to watch more of. So yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum. I'm willing to put in the work on that, but I don't want to have to keep doing it. So, Yeah, somebody's talking about game streaming. Well, if the good news is game streaming has been tried multiple times. So, see, game streaming isn't the problem. Exclusives on game streaming are the problem. So if there's no other way, because game streaming as an option, yeah, whatever, who cares? I mean, it's like if people want that, it's just that if it's the only way to access the game, then that's when it becomes a problem. Redbox being intentionally run to the ground, going bankrupt, removing all media from paying customers to use their service. I thought Redbox was rentals. So I mean, you weren't. Again, that's the sort of thing. You weren't really entitled. If I'm thinking of the same thing, you weren't really entitled to own it. I don't think. I could be wrong, because you just return the disc or whatever, and if you can get it on disc, then you should be able to get it independently of them also. So it wasn't really at risk. So if it was intentionally run to the ground, look, there's a lot of stuff like that where, yeah, it's I mean, again, I don't know the story on Redbox, but I know there's been, I think it was Kmart, Toys R Us, I think there was some more, where it's essentially by corporate raiders, where what they do is, yeah, they used to be called corporate raiders. Now they're just called like large investors or something. Where what they do is they buy, or actually GameStop might have been like that, where they buy a company and then just kind of cut out all this stuff that they can sell off for a short-term profit, stuff that the company could really use, but they're calling it, they're calling the process, making it more efficient, and then they load it up with debt to some kind of cash out, and then they, I think, sell it off. Is how, I forget the exact process, but it's incredibly destructive what they do, and it's the sort of thing in a sane world it would be illegal, because it basically just ruins functional companies. Let's see. Somebody's saying they want to buy a shack in West Virginia and start a chicken farm. That sounds like an achievable dream. So, I think if you work at it, that sounds entirely possible. But yeah, so I don't know if that's what happened with Redbox or not, but there are more companies this happened to. But I'm just drawing a blank on the names, where basically the company was functioning, it was turning a profit, and it was sustainable enough. I mean, is that that's what sustainable means can be a whole other thing, but under modern standards, it's considered sustainable. But then they just come in, gut it, load up with debt, cash out, and then the company just gets completely just decimated in the process. So. All right. What's somebody saying? I didn't notice it was IMCIA. Well, IMCIA might be speaking the truth there, We don't know. Maybe that is his dream. Or one of them, All right. I lost my spot, but. Oh, yeah. Okay. So. Yeah, interesting movies. Okay. Oh, yeah. This is one that's going to take a while to answer. Why is Microsoft still relevant in 2024 when Google has free alternatives to Office? Linux is a thing. Wine and Proton are getting better at natively running Windows games. And while Microsoft has largely mishandled Xbox. Okay, well, there's a lot underneath that question, and I'll try to go through that too. Okay, so going literally, the first reply is probably the best one. Business. Microsoft has so much integration into modern businesses. I want to say it's like 90% or more. Some of that has to do with them being so much of a better deal financially than any competitors. Some of that has to do with them being the only company that can practically meet lots of like workplace requirements, like or some sort of certifications, I guess, not workplace requirements, certifications that they have to adhere to. This is way beyond my level. This is just what I've heard from people really into business that have explained it. I mean, it's near monopoly levels of control. Like, and there's when you factor in the cost of alternatives, it's like they're not even close. Like it's, like apparently they've just there's not really an alternative for lots of systems within it. So that's probably the main bread and butter. Let's see. You said alternatives to Office. Well, I mean, you can't discount the entrenchment Microsoft has had also. Again, I don't know enough about Office and what business requirements are, but it could be the alternatives to Office don't do all the things that Microsoft Office does, or Office 365, I guess, that a lot of big corporations they're not going to want to move to the alternative unless the alternative can do it 100%. And if it can only do it like 98%, then that might not be good enough unless they're forced to change. Now, Wine Proton getting better at natively running Windows games, that one I could talk about more. Yeah, you're talking about better. Whereas if the game you want to play, okay, well, this kind of leads to the next question, but the game you want to play doesn't run on that or has big problems, or you have to jump through like 12 hoops to make it run, well, that's going to be the deterrent itself. But also, like I said, entrenchment, because new systems are, I mean, for the most part, I guess the Steam Deck is the exception, but a lot of new systems are going to be sold with Windows on it. So you're kind of, I guess, overall, I'd say it's part of the reason like Adobe has such a presence also, is that for some of the alternatives, depending on your use case, still aren't good enough for some things. And then some of it's entrenchment, where this stuff's been around for decades, businesses depend on it, or the software they need depends on it. So it's not, for some use cases, you can 100% transition, others you can't. And this leads to another question. Let's see. Was that here, or I thought, okay, I'm going to jump ahead. Let's see. Okay. So I saw another Linux question here. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, there was directly one below. This one had a big reply, and then there's one below it. Okay, this one will take a while. This is one I was originally not going to mention much until I got into a video, but certain things have me rethinking everything, so now I'll reveal more on it. They're saying, I'd be interested to hear your experiences, thoughts on Linux. Have you ever tried using it day to day? What are your general thoughts on it? Okay. I guess I have tried a little bit way in the past using it day to day. The thing is, I haven't lately, because what makes more sense than using Linux day to day or before doing that is making a list of everything you do on Windows or Mac, whatever, and then seeing if there's an equivalent of that on Linux. And if there's a significant number that's not, there's not a lot of points for most people to use Linux, because there's going to be things you just can't do. And if you don't want to make a list of everything you use your computer for, then I'd say you shouldn't be using Linux. Like, if that's too much of an ask, then Linux is going to be way much of an ask. But okay, so here's something I've been doing off and on behind the scenes for like a couple years now. Like I say, off and on, so not persistently. I had an idea for a video where I've heard, like, I've heard this over and over and over again, that like Linux can like run all your games or run all your old games, or it's better for old game compatibility than on Windows. So I had the thought, Well, you know what? It's been a long time since I looked at it, and some games that used to run on Windows don't run anymore. I just haven't looped around to them. Why not really put that to the test and go kind of Mythbusters on this one way or the other? So my idea for a test was to get a bunch of games like 3D accelerated games, because virtual machines, I think they can cover just about any 2D game I know of, or that you can't run natively. So I was going to focus on 3D accelerated games, and I was going to compare which could run on Windows 7, which can run on Windows 10. I've been at this since before Windows 11 came out. That's how backed up I am this. And on Linux. And then just go through all of them and see which ones run, which ones can hack it. And then again, everything was on the table. So you can use tweaks, community patches, any information. This is like an open book test. So, and I was going to pick games that are kind of off the beaten path. So like, I think like 95% of the games I had picked aren't even on Steam or GOG. And I was going to hold it to a quality control standard to see if I could have, like, the standard I had was, can the game look as good as, look and run as good as it could have when the game came out? And part of that was having anti-aliasing, hardware forced and not the fake kind like FXAA or SMAA, where it won't cover. Yeah, I was gonna have the chain link fence test, which chain link fences usually in games use alpha textures, and those look all sparkly. And if you use them FXAA or SMAA, they still look sparkly because they can't get down to that fine detail. So that pretty much means some level of super sampling or downsampling. And like, I had experiences on Linux also in the process. I got through all of Windows 7 pretty much. Like, I think I'd have to look at my numbers, but I think I got like 97% of the games to run, like, with fiddling around. And I started making ways into Linux, but Linux has so many things where I would just run into a complete wall and then try to get help. And then even the people helping me would struggle with it. And then it just, so that was one issue. Like, again, with the forced anti-aliasing, oh my God, did I have to jump through so many hoops for that. And even then, it's not just a one-size-fits-all thing. It's like, there's like 3 different methods you have to try. And it could be misleading. It got confusing too, because DG Voodoo 2 is a fantastic piece of software for getting lots of old games compatible. Like, it doesn't get all of them, but it helps with so many. And that does support multi-sampling anti-aliasing within it. But see, on Windows, I think with both NVIDIA and AMD, if you enable that multi-sampling anti-aliasing, you can set it so that the drivers will hook into that, and it will also add super sampling on top of that. So you can have as clean a picture as you can ask for on Windows with these old games. Whereas with Linux, I don't think you can do that. You can only have the multi-sampling, and it won't hook into the drivers. So yeah, it's nitpicky, but on some games that makes a much bigger difference than others. So, however, on Linux, you can get downsampling with, GameScope. However, I had to jump through so many hoops to get that working. Yeah, just trying to get GameScope, part of it was me consulting the sort of experienced people on this. They had bad information. But that took a back and forth of email chain of like over a month just to get downsampling working on some games in Linux. Whereas on Windows, that's literally going to the control panel, checking a box, and then maybe checking another option, and then that's it, you're done. And it's been that way for over a decade. Whereas it took a month worth of troubleshooting with help from experts to get this working in Linux. And even then, it varies a lot, whether you can get that to work and other stuff. So, And the thing is, it feels, maybe they're not all that bad, but it feels like every third thing I do is kind of like that in Linux, where some of it kind of takes me back to like Windows XP or earlier days, where when I was doing this game testing, I would manage to hard lock the system in Linux, where the entire screen's frozen. And like the only way I could reboot it was to basically physically reboot it. Now, I learned a few tricks to kind of prevent the worst of it, usually. But I was thinking, just from pure anecdotal, pure experiential evidence, it happened as frequently on Linux about as it did on XP. Because XP was way more stable than Windows 98, Windows 95. But there were some games I could still get the screen to just kind of hard lock and I have to physically reset the computer. That would still happen on Windows 7, but it was rare. And on Windows 10, that's incredibly rare for me. Like that almost never happens. That like I get just through getting a game to run, I managed to hard lock the system. So for the frequency that it happened to me on Linux, it felt like Windows XP. And there's lots of things that I forgot about from Windows 98 or Windows XP that I kind of see creep back into Linux, that like, oh, that's right, we had VSync issues, or like, what was something else? I forget. So there's that element of it. And see, some people will just portray this as Linux being different. No, it's a lot more than that. Something being different, I can take different all day. Because like the example I was going to use in the video is like on Windows, like your hard drives are represented by letters like C drive, D drive, E drive. On Linux, it's not like that. They're mounted specifically in the folders you can specify. Okay, that's different. You're talking about basically the same functionality or maybe even more on Linux, but it's just a different way of doing things. I'm fine with different. Whereas that example of like the downsampling I was talking about, that we're talking about a checkbox, with a couple options in a menu on Windows. Whereas we're talking about a path that you have to go down on Linux to find the right build of it and then get it to install. But anyway, 2 points. Okay, one thing I think that's generally true to say about Linux is, a few things. Okay, because so much is dependent on your use case. So much is dependent on your use case. The more mainstream a thing you're trying to do that's like well covered by Linux, like let's say web browsing, or like you mentioned, OpenOffice, like I just need a text editor. Yeah, see, I'm someone, my office needs couldn't be more basic. So I'm sure OpenOffice, LibreOffice, whatever, is just fine for me. But if you're deep into a business and a company that has all these standards, maybe it's not. The more mainstream a thing you're doing, or the less picky you are, the better Linux is going to be, I think. But the more specific something you're going to do, the more, more long tail stuff, or even flirting with long tail, like just something a little bit specific. Like you have like an email style that you like, or like an email client style that you like, or, God, I don't know, like I mentioned Office, but like in my case, it's like games with anti-aliasing. The more you're likely to run into problems. And I'd say Linux at its best is better and nicer than Windows. And at its worst, it's so much worse than Windows. Like I've thought before, like Linux is almost like when you're driving on the road, like some well-funded places have like really nice highways, like it looks kind of clean, everything's well lit, might have nice little side standards. Linux feels like that when it's going well, but then if you have to go off the beaten path, it's almost like a dirt road that ceases to become a road and might have landmines in it or something. Whereas Windows is more just like a kind of a dirt road that goes everywhere, or dirt or gravel road, depending. It's never. So it's like the fluctuate. But if I'm trying to do like weird stuff and off the beaten path, at least in my experience, I'm going to have so much less drama on Windows for most things. But again, it depends on your use case. I'm just talking on average. So it's but yeah, a few more things. The reason I'm telling all this instead of saving it for a video is now I'm having doubts as to whether I should continue even doing that test because it's been so time consuming. I mean, that's some of what I was working off. I was talking about a side video. Linux can be a real time sink, like even with help. But now, see, I was just trying to find like the closest thing to a standard for gaming that you can get in Linux. And I was using like Ubuntu Mate on it because some of the people helping me actually worked on that and had like some tweaks in it. But now I'm learning like Ubuntu's planning to go to like a complete snap system. And I don't know, is that going to be the standard? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, standard, yeah, I realize that's kind of a relative term in Linux, but like for the rookie standard, an acceptable, yeah, that's a good way to put it, an acceptable rookie standard. So in other words, you're coming to Linux, you want to run games, you want to do lots of different things on the system that you do on Windows, on Linux. What's an acceptable distro for it? Because, yeah, see, somebody's saying the standard for gaming on Linux is Steam Deck. Well, that's not a desktop, so that already doesn't fit, you know? So I get the feeling Linux might be in a real state of transition or not, and I kind of want, I really don't want to do this test and have it be like just kind of outdated in a year after or so afterwards. You know, I have my Windows 7 results. That's not going anywhere. But I'm wondering, like, I realize you can't truly future-proof something, but I want to future-proof this test as much as is practical. And if everything's in flux, then that might not even be possible. So, so I was saying snaps get a lot of backlash. Yeah, that's another thing that I'd say is generally true of Linux is I think Linux has some significant problems. Some of it is not its fault at all, and others are totally its fault. And one of the things I'd say is totally its fault is not straightening out the package managers, like for the end user, because it's like there's a lot of competing standards. And the thing is, you don't need to have just one standard. Like on Windows, for example, you have EXEs, you have that MSI type installer, you have batch files, you know, you have the UMP, UWP, those are god awful. But the point is, or no, a better example would be video players. Okay, there's not just one video format. You know, there's AVIs with all these different codecs, you know, like XVID, DivX, UT codec, Huffy UV. You have X264 encoding. You have X265 encoding. You have all these different codecs and formats. But the thing is, most people, you know, you get a player, maybe you need to install a codec pack, and then that's it. You can play kind of pretty much anything. That's what package managers need to be for the end user on Linux. Like, and it's not there. And I realize that's a really tall order, but that is dead essential if you want to compete against Windows, or you have a completely walled garden kind of approach, which I don't think anybody wants, unless it's like a specialty device or something. So it's, I mean, yeah, you don't want dependency hell. And then and I think that kind of is Linux's fault for not getting that straightened out, because to me, that's so blindingly obvious a priority. And if you want to have different standards, you can have different standards, but they all need to work at least on one distro. What are some other things I was thinking of? Okay, well, in gaming, when I talk about things that I can't do, okay, I realize this is niche, but this is this is a niche I really, really care about, and it's some of the best experiences I've had on the computer. Linux just has almost nothing for stereoscopic gaming, or VR might have a little bit, but it's like super prototypal for VR. And look, Windows has had stereoscopic gaming at least since the early 2000s, like since like 2001, 2002. Now it kind of went through a dark period, but then it reemerged with VR, and like it's better than ever now for stereoscopic gaming on Windows. So it's like Linux just has nothing. So that's already something I would have to give up automatically, and I don't want to give that up. I mean, then you can say, well, then you can just dual boot, but then, okay, if I'm dual booting, that's a big inconvenience in itself. And then I have to question, well, what am I getting on Linux that I'm not on Windows? So I guess some other points. I might repeat a lot of this in a future video, but another thing is Windows now, they're throwing up a lot of crap for the average user. Like, it feels the way modern Windows has some nice features, but it also feels the way old Windows used to feel like if it was infected by spyware. You know, like the Bonsai Buddy type crap, or not the really malicious stuff, but the stuff that's like crapware everywhere, bloatware. That's how default Windows feels now. So you have to devote, if you want a good experience, you kind of have to devote time to gutting that out. Or in my case, like kind of locking down updates so nothing updates without my permission. And that's that's time you have to devote towards getting it working on Windows for a better experience. And with Linux, you have to devote time towards things that are just like I just took for granted. Like that was another thing, like setting a custom resolution. Like one resolution I use for Game Dungeon sometimes is 1440 by 1080, because that's 4:3 aspect ratio, and if it's a 4:3 aspect ratio game, that might be the best resolution for me to record at for, putting on YouTube. Well, if I want to add that in Linux, there's not like an easy way to do it. At least last time I checked. In the past, I was able to add that through looking up through a few like long console commands that, they're very cryptic to the average person. But you have to get the data on your video device and the monitor specs, and then put that in. But then the last time I tried that didn't work. Although I think it did work in the past. So it's something that worked in the past, doesn't now. And I don't know how much time it's going to take me to figure that out. But that's just like one example out of like many. And it's like, again, the more streamlined your experience, the more mainstream your experience is and simple with what you're doing, probably the better the time you're going to have on Linux. But once you veer off that path, man, it can get ugly. Because both operating systems are going to have quirks and issues. But in my opinion, you get way more bang for your buck troubleshooting on Windows than you do on Linux. All of that said, I 100% recognize the need to have an alternative to Windows. Because, Windows, each new one feels like it's like a noose that's still loose around my neck, but they're just kind of tightening it a little bit each time. And so far, I'm able to get out of it. All the stuff that really, like, disturbs me, as in, like, I'm losing control of my system, and if Microsoft has a bad day, I don't have my system anymore. That's what I want to avoid at all costs. So, I look at Linux more like a bomb shelter. That's a good way to look at it, because you're not expecting all the amenities that you get from like a nice house in a bomb shelter. But if the bombs are falling, you damn well want that bomb shelter. So the better people can make Linux, absolutely. But yeah, I guess the reason I bring all this up, if you've been listening to some of what I've been saying, or if you have opinions on my game test video that might be stalled now because I'm not sure which way the wind's blowing on Linux, let me know. Like, do you think it's worth pursuing? That was the other thing that kind of discouraged me. Okay, so I got to the point where I was like doing tests on Linux. I was on Ubuntu Mate. I was using Lutris. I learned lots of tricks for old games to use on Lutris to implement to get them working. But there's a whole bag of tricks I was using because I was actually there was almost like a flow chart I was going through because in order to get the anti-aliasing is such a bastard on Linux because you have to test one thing, then test another thing, and then maybe the third thing works, or maybe the first thing works, or maybe all three of them don't work, and it's really slows the process down. But one of the things I was doing was to have to test the Play on Linux build of Wine for some versions, and then if that didn't work, then move on to see if like DG Voodoo 2 worked, and then move on to just something like with Proton or maybe Proton I did with DG Voodoo 2. Proton with the GameScope, because if you want to force hardware anti-aliasing like natively in Linux, you pretty much have to use Wine and not Proton because it just won't work for Proton. But it has to be for OpenGL and not Proton, the DXVK stuff. So as soon as you move to Proton, you've lost the option to force hardware anti-aliasing through the drivers, and then your only option, then your only option is if you're lucky, you have DG Voodoo 2 support, or if you're unlucky, then your only option is downsampling, which you need GameScope for. So, but yeah, the problem I was running into is I was going through games, I tried my usual bag of tricks on them, got some of them working, took screenshots as evidence, and then I ran into several that I couldn't get working. So I recorded the error, and then I sent all the information to some of the Linux people helping me. And sometimes they fix the error or they wouldn't get the error. And then I wasn't getting the kind of feedback. The feedback I was getting was essentially works for me. And I gave like all the details on like my configuration, the system, and I wasn't getting feedback on what's different. So now I'm thinking, well, geez, this is gonna like really hurt the credibility of this test then. Because if I'm trying this and I'm trying all these procedures and it does not work for me, but then somebody else on a different build of Linux, it does work for them, and we don't know why, well, that's a big problem. I mean, I need to know why. I need clear results. I either need the game to consistently work, consistently not work, or else know exactly why and then troubleshoot and fix it. And I was thinking, well, geez, if I can't do that, well, I mean, I guess I could put my results and then put results from others, but then, let's see. See, a lot of people are saying SteamOS. Okay, I want to reemphasize 95% or more of these games are not on Steam. So that doesn't mean SteamOS can't run them, but that means SteamOS is not designed to run these games. So maybe you can install like some third-party programs, but maybe another distro entirely would be a better fit for it, you know? Like maybe Pop! OS is better. That's if, and see, that's if things continue with the apt-get style of doing things. Or maybe that's shifting. I don't know. So now, and I guess the other thing is, I've been using some donated hardware people gave to me for this, but now it's enough time has passed that this is going to seem kind of old. And part of the test was to test this on modern hardware, or modern-ish hardware, you know. And I'm thinking, well, the longer this takes, man, this is going to make my test look bad then. So I don't know. So yeah. Oh yeah, my email, rosswscott@gmail.com. If you want to weigh in on this as to like what you would recommend in my shoes, trying like, oh no, it's totally worth pursuing. You should stick with Debian, and like here we'll find some more people that can like really give you like expert help with Linux that can kind of follow along with you. Or saying no, Ross, it's all chaos. You might be better off shelving this and doing more Game Dungeon instead. You know, so yeah, with Linux, I think the people claiming it's a total substitute are just almost being like willfully ignorant on it. However, I absolutely am in support of having an alternative to Windows. And Linux has made incredible progress, but depending on what you're doing, it's still not there, and it probably never will be there, but I would rather have that bomb shelter than not. You know, so yeah, it's, you know, okay, well, with modern hardware compatibility, it doesn't have to be like bleeding edge or anything, but just something like, if you were to go and buy a computer today, this would be a reasonable choice. You know, something like that, you know. So we could pick and choose the, well, I don't want to throw a lot of money at hardware unless I'm just going at this 100% either. That's why I was using hand-me-down stuff. But yeah, if it's, yeah, another complication in this was, in order to have hardware anti-alias, forced driver level anti-aliasing on Linux, once upon a time, it might have been possible otherwise, but for some games, like older ones, your only option is going to be with an NVIDIA card. Because with the AMD drivers, they used to be able to force it through the drivers, but now they just have the open source drivers, and those aren't capable of forcing it. I think like on Wine, like on the OpenGL level. They used to be able to years back, but I think they're not now. And even with NVIDIA, it's hit or miss. So, there's like a chain, like with the anti-aliasing. First, I do try the hardware level. Then if that doesn't work, I move to the, you know, DG Voodoo 2, see if that, with the downsampling. If that doesn't work, see if I just use just downsampling. But the thing to check though is, say a game doesn't run and that's an NVIDIA versus an AMD problem. Well, I need to test for that too. So it's like, I don't need to test them all on AMD card, but I do need to test if it just being NVIDIA was the problem. But I don't think it was for the vast majority of what I was doing though, so. So someone wrote in the chat, sudo apt get girlfriend. But yeah, it's too in flux. It might, I might be flying too close to the sun here attempting this test, and just better stick on Windows. Yeah, you guys won't like this, or Linux people won't like this, but my first thought about hearing that Ubuntu was moving to Snap, so that like the future package managers is kind of unknown, and we're still trying to come up with like an end user standard. Yeah, that's the word to use, end user standard. So you can have different package managers, but they need to work for the end user. It needs to be, and yes, I realize what incredibly tall order that is. But my first thought about hearing all that was like, for myself, was thinking, geez, you know, I think my time might be better spent just really buckling down and tweaking the AI even more on Windows. I mean, not the AI, the GUI on Windows, because that's my biggest complaint about Windows compared to Linux, is that like the GUI holds me back on a lot of things that it doesn't necessarily on Linux. I mean, I know there's, for my use case, there's not much of an advantage to Linux over Windows, but I'm a special case where I can do all these tricks to kind of bring Windows to heel for what I want to do. I mean, I think the other thing I wanted that I thought Linux, that was a nice feature on Linux, was it has a hard drive file system. I forget which one, that it can be used to detect bit rot as it happens. And I was thinking, oh, that would be kind of great for storage drive. Windows doesn't have that, or Windows Server might, but regular Windows doesn't. It's pretty much just NTFS. And that doesn't have the same kind of redundancy. There's software you can use to get some protections, but that sounded like a genuine reason to like prefer Linux for what I do. Like my usage is game heavy and screwing around with games heavy, you know, like with stereoscopic VR, modding, old games, you know, getting games working on widescreen, that's sort of just all game heavy, multimedia heavy, you know, video editing or manipulation, you know, image manipulation, audio manipulation, that sort of thing. What was another one? Multimedia and just miscellaneous, weird miscellaneous programs. Like to give you an example, let's see. Somebody's saying I'm a very special case. Yes, I am. But there's a lot of people who do things that are only a little bit off the beaten path, and they're going to run into big problems also. That's the thing. What was another one? Okay. Oh yeah, example of like a weird little, well, some weird programs I use. Like sometimes specialty programs to extract like music from games that use funky formats. Or one thing I used, I've retired this and brought it back. I resurrected it because I thought I was done with it, but then I thought, oh, no, I need it again. I used to use well, now I do use it again, a program called Burn to the Brim, which what it does is you select all the a bunch of files and folders you want, you throw it in there, and then you specify what file size is your limit, and it will kind of calculate the best combinations of files for you to maximize your space on a CD or a DVD or whatever. And I used to use that back in the day, then I stopped using that because it wasn't burning much. But then once I learned about the M disk, you know, the Millennium disk, I started using that again for backups for Blu-ray. That's an example of like a weird little specialty program I might use. I have like dozens of stuff like that on Windows. I'd have to go through with it. And maybe there's an equivalent of that on Linux. Maybe there's not. So it's like, there can be all kinds of things. Geez, I have one more thought, but I think I lost it. People are probably sick of me talking about Linux anyway. But yeah, my thoughts on it's definitely a mix. And oh yeah, I guess the final thought for specialty programs like that, those actually might be fine for a virtual machine because I could just load up a version of Windows. I don't need to run them natively. I just need to run them. But the things I can't use virtual machine for, essentially, I guess unless it's a kernel virtual machine, will be the VR and stereoscopic stuff where you need real low-level hardware access. I will say this, if Windows gets so bad, I can't see myself using it. I think my line in the sand is they make it impossible for me to just boot up my system. Let's say I've already downloaded all the software I need, boot up my system, just install stuff and start using it. And prevent an update from happening if I want to. If it gets to the point with Windows where that's just impossible due to how they design it, then yes, I pretty much have to go to Linux, and then I'll probably use kernel virtual machines of Windows for most of my stuff. Use native Linux stuff when it's convenient, but it'll just be kind of like a gateway to using most of my workflow in Linux and just seeing how long I can kind of survive along those lines. So, all right, that's enough on Linux. You got a lot of my thoughts. And maybe I'll make a video in the future putting those coherently still. Yeah, and I didn't give all my thoughts, but those are the broad things. Let's see. Have you seen the show Severance? Yeah, I ended up seeing the first season of it. It was pretty great. I liked it. It had like a mysterious aspect to it that's good. It had some humor also. So it had a little surreal too. Okay, this person bought and played Puzzle Agent. They kept calling them Puzzle Detective for some reason. Did you have the same problem? No, I like I feel like agent has more kind of, yeah, I was about to say the word agency. You know, I feel like agents are a little more badass than detectives usually, just from concept. Because if you're an agent, like your whole job is to go out and kind of, you know, often go in the field and solve problems directly. Whereas a detective, of course, a detective can be badass also, but their job description is to kind of solve crimes. So it's more investigative. Whereas an agent, you could be going, investigation is part of it, but you also might be expected to do enforcement on the spot. And yes, that's also true of detective, but I think the frequency is higher for agents. You know, if you're like an agent going and like investigating, like if fertilizer is being used to make bombs or something, well, you might be expected to deal with that right on the spot if it is. So, but yeah, I guess the detective could also, but it seems the frequency is higher. Okay. Let's see. Where do you see the fight for consumer rights in video games going if Stop Killing Games campaign is successful? What about if it's unsuccessful? You know, that's a really difficult question to answer. I have no idea, because I could just as easily see this as spurring more demand for rights in other areas as I could to just, no, we get games and then that's it. It just doesn't go farther. Put it like this, if it goes farther, it's almost certainly not coming from me, because I don't have the energy or quite the same incentive to do that. So I have no, again, I do not know. It might inspire others to do more. It might just stall and go dead in the water, but at least our games are safe. That's I could see either one happening. This seems like a similar question. If games or software as a service found a legal loophole in many countries, what other ventures could use the same loophole that aren't currently? Well, this isn't, I mean, I guess anything digital, really. I mean, digital goods, digital content would probably be the main thing. It's not really a loophole that we're dealing with so much. It's more like, so much of it's a gray area is what's happening. So I don't think you're going to see loopholes exactly, because loopholes make it sound like, oh, these laws apply, but oh, there's this weird exception. And that's not really what's going, I mean, it might be a little bit of that going on in the games. It's more just that this hasn't been tested. See, in the United States, it's like the only area I know of where it has been kind of established, where they just say what they put in that end user license agreement goes for the most part. So whatever they put in there, that's what happens, the end. And so that's not really a loophole. It's just, we're just letting you know the companies can kind of write their own laws on this. In Europe and maybe Australia, possibly Canada, that's not clear what's going on. It's more like, it's like what I had in the last Dead Game News video, where they're talking, where their explanation of what applies doesn't apply to, or the explanation of what laws cover this doesn't apply to the situation. So there's literally no clear law that defines the situation. And I think a lot of people in charge are happy to let that lie if they can, but since we're forcing several countries to respond to this one way or the other, it's either going to be against it or not. So, okay, I may start skipping some. Somebody's saying, would you consider releasing a list of games you probably won't play but love the soundtrack of? Ross's soundtrack list. Yeah, but I'm too far behind, so it's too much of a mess. But yeah, I could do that in the future. And the same person asked, what would you say are your favorite games of the decade for each decade you've been alive? What games have you played that have captured the zeitgeist of the decade or time period in which they were made. Well, to the latter one, I have no idea, and that's not something I actually care about that much. And, well, the first one, I'm not sure either. However, I did have an idea. This is low priority, but it is something I sort of want to do because people have asked about this sort of thing. Is what the brain lost for a second there. Oh yeah, you know how I have my games list? I might make a separate list where for each year I put my personal favorite, 3 games or 5 games or something. The ones that really stand out that I think like this game was for that year. I think these were the best for my taste. And then I could just sort of perpetually update it. That's something that might be just kind of fun to put up, and I could just make it like a side section of the site if people were interested in that. It's low priority though. I'd rather get the game dungeons out, get kind of caught up on videos and stuff, but that's something I could see myself doing eventually. And then for stuff like 2024, 2023, I might not even have entries because I haven't caught up to them yet. So yeah, so for they wouldn't be the best games. What? Lost my train of thought. Well, it's just like for that year because there's a whole ton of games I haven't played or I don't know, but for 1 year per year for the games that came out and that, it wouldn't be the games I played that year. It would be the games for the year they were released. So I would, because that can kind of narrow the scope more, and I can see, okay, for this year, like I think these 2 were the ones I liked the most, and that was it. And some years could be tricky, so because they might have a lot that I liked. But yeah, I can maybe do a list like that in the future. But I don't know if I'd even give that its own video, or it would be a real quick one. All right, I'm gonna start skipping questions now. Okay, any thoughts on the recent internal Google compromises which were followed up by several hackings? I hadn't heard about those. Do you worry about Google's ability to actively support YouTube as a service as time goes on? I think probably not, but what you might see happen is a lot of videos start getting deleted. Because I think the biggest limitation for Google on YouTube, like I am floored how much they manage to store on there. Like it just kind of boggles my mind. It's like kind of, I mean, it's not on the same level, but it's kind of like when you think of like how big the universe is, if you try to contemplate like how many star systems there are, it's just like, it's just too big. I can't process that. That's kind of how I feel about how much storage, how many videos Google is storing from YouTube. So I feel like at some point that caves in, but other than that, I'm not aware of why they couldn't keep doing it. I mean, maybe the cost of streaming add up too much, but is Microsoft Defender good enough security? Is there any free antivirus software that you would recommend? I've heard, I feel like this answer kind of varies year by year. The last time I heard a lot of people say it's good enough. I don't use it because it doesn't like certain programs I use to tame Windows, even though they don't set off any other virus scanners. So I know that it's just them not wanting me to kind of mess with what Microsoft is doing, and it's not an actual virus. I currently use Avira. However, that's another thing where you have to jump through some hoops to not get it to like have ads pop up at you, where I even forget how I did that. I think, you have to firewall a certain program for it, but I mean, it's probably decent still. But sometimes what I use is I'll look, there are a few antivirus comparison sites that I look up and I see like what their best coverage is. Like in the past, Avira was like kind of best of class for free ones, even better than Defender. Again, it waxes and wanes each year. So yeah, in fact, I think the better question would be, what are the best sites for testing this stuff? Because maybe some of these are looking at superficial things and I just don't know any better. And I care most about what detection rates. That's the part I'm most interested in. I can live with false positives. I can work around that, but let's see. They're saying, you seem to work pretty flat out. How do you deal with creative burnout? More to the point, do you deal with creative burnout? I am dying to have some days off. I guess, if we're being perfectly honest, the way I deal with that is, I mean, it's probably like a combination of fear and sense of obligation, where I know that if I don't manage to put a certain amount out over a certain frequency, I'm kind of risking being able to pay my bills in the future, you know, have a place to live or pay for groceries. And that fear kind of pushed me past like whatever like problems I might have otherwise. I think it's a terrible way to motivate myself because the thing is my output, the thing, pretty much all of Game Dungeon, Freeman's Mind, not Civil Protection. So maybe even some of the later Civil Protections though. No, maybe not. Maybe not. Those are all kind of compromises for what I would do if I had like no demands and it was just for my creative output. And I would probably make stuff more like Civil Protection or like the weird kind of one-off videos I do, where I would kind of want like an original storyline and, you know, just kind of its own funny comedy stuff. Whereas, you know, with stuff with a Game Dungeon or Freeman's Mind, those are using more training wheels and I can get them, I can get them out faster because I'm relying partially on other content. So, so there would be a lot less of that sort of thing, but there would be more Civil Protections or other exotic ideas I had, maybe other like worlds or characters, that sort of thing, but there'd be less of it. And that's the way it would happen if it was going like a little more organically, you know, from creativity, where I'm just making it purely because I'm inspired to. So yeah, so yeah, you get more less quality stuff because there's the economic driver force behind it. But yeah, I mean, when I say less quality, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people still like Game Dungeon, and I like many moments of Game Dungeon, but I feel like I can make something even cooler, is the way I look at it. So, but yeah, just, I guess when I'm just getting really, really stressed, one habit I do is, like, I'll sometimes like keep a list of fun things I want to do after I have free time again, you know, and that can be like a very minor kind of like moral boost or something. If you're talking about creative burnout, like where you just can't think of something fresh, there's different layers of that, because I can understand that for the moment. If that's the way I feel in the moment, then I try to direct my energy towards something that's a little more tedious but still needs to be done. Like again, with like audio editing or some aspects of video editing, or just finding assets I need to go in the videos, or sometimes if they're like, if I'm really backed up, like the dishes are everywhere and that it's becoming a liability not having clean dishes, you know, go clean dishes, that sort of thing. Or laundry if running really low. And then like if I can exercise or eat, and throughout the cycle of my day, it doesn't mean I'm going to be completely rejuvenated, but it means my mind will be not completely broken enough to go back to coming up with something creative. And the additional pressure of that forces me to kind of go through with that. But yeah, it's not a great answer, I'm afraid. There's probably way better ways to do it, but I haven't found them. It's more like the time, what I'm trying to do isn't practical for the time that I have, but I don't really have a good alternative. So I'm just trying to make it work. So at least the campaign is like kind of winding down. Yeah, like once I get the ECI promotion out, the European Citizens Initiative out, and the next game dungeon, I feel like that buys me a little bit of good grace time where I can relax for a bit, and then I'll be energized to actually do something fresh again. So instead, it's just I've been wanting to have a break for just months and months and months now. So, all right. Have you ever been in a community with a full-on wacko conspiracy theorist? I've had a few people email me, but they're saying that for the level they're talking about, let's say, let's see. So, okay, they behave more or less like a functioning person, except for something wacky they believe. That's rare, but I mean, maybe. I mean, I figure if they're functional enough and they just believe something that, like, yeah, I think's nuts, that's not a big problem. I mean, it's like, as long as it's not directly relevant with actions I'm taking or plans, I mean, people can believe what they want. That's not a problem for me until it like interferes with what I'm doing or they're making threats or something. I mean, that can be sort of a agree to disagree. Okay, and the example they give is the person seriously believes that microprocessors were not invented in the 1900s, but are literal black magic, the knowledge of which was obtained from demons by a bunch of warlocks at least 1,000 years ago. However, they more or less behave like they otherwise behave like a more or less functioning person. Well, if I was talking that, say, it's like, well, all the evidence I've seen really makes it look like we just came across this, or, you know, through gradual refined processes so I don't know. I disagree. I don't think that really works because all the preponderance of evidence seems the other way and whole hell of a lot of science behind this. But I mean, if that's what you think, I mean, I can at least emotionally, I 100% understand the belief that, you know, your computer is just possessed by demons and this is like demonic technology. It's like, yeah, it can act that way for sure. But yeah, and I probably just wouldn't try to engage in a lot of topics around computer process. Good news not good news. Good news to know. Two tech news things reminds me. One, you might have seen this, Intel's 13th and 14th generation processors apparently have a critical flaw that once it happens, it physically damages the processor and it's going to be permanently unstable after that. That sounds like such a massive screw up. I'm not sure I've seen anything on this level before. It's unclear to me if you patch it and it hasn't had the problem yet, you'll be okay. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. I don't know, but man, that makes me not want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I value stability so much in computers. That's like, that might be top for what I value for most situations. And the other one was, there was an article recently about how it sounds like a lot of the GeForce 4000 series from NVIDIA have, like a lot of the manufacturers used poor thermal paste so that they go bad after a certain amount of time, and the processors can kind of fry themselves due to certain hotspots in them. And I was thinking, wow, that would have been a lot better to know. Well, I mean, I don't have one, but that would have been a lot better to know like a year and a half earlier. So yeah, check your temperatures if you have a 4000 card and maybe consider replacing the thermal paste on it. Let's see. But yeah, I guess the other thing I was going to say with computers, for the average user, like, I mean, even me, the level of disconnect between understanding the core of how a CPU works versus what it can do, I only understand rough concepts. Like the level of like reliability and the processes that go into this, and the just the sheer amount of power of it, it may as well be magic for how it acts, you know, from a practical standpoint. But when I think about just contemplating how many operations go, I mean, like right now, watching a video, the amount of and on a monitor where every pixel is changing, you know, at you know, within milliseconds. There's there's so many layers that go behind that. It's just kind of incredible to fathom once you look into just like everything that goes into it. And I just know the basics. You know, I don't know what's like. I don't truly understand what's happening like at the actual chip design level. You know, with like, okay, well, this amount of cache is being devoted here, and like the instructions they're using. That's way beyond me. So I mean. So yeah, I mean, so if the person believes it's warlocks, as long as their job isn't in tech support, like let's say their job is like their deliver stuff, or what's another job? They're a plumber or something like that. As long as their job doesn't directly interfere with that, then if they want to believe that it's warlocks that made CPUs, then I don't see that's a huge problem. I mean, as long as they're don't get like really aggressive and violent about it. But I mean, I guess for some people, it genuinely bothers them that they don't see the light of how it's made. But I mean, for me, I'm just looking at a practical level. It's like I have zero problems if the person wants to believe that, as long as it doesn't create problems for me. So. Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of look at that way about flat earthers. You know, I mean, unless they're maybe if they were unless they're like an air traffic controller or like work in a space program and their job is specifically relevant to that, it's a relatively harmless belief for the most part. So it's like, yeah, if you want to believe that, that's fine. But like if it was. Oh, well, what's a good example that won't get me in trouble? Like, let's see. Well, I'm trying to think. Well, okay, I guess if they were. Oh, okay, yeah, I know one. Let's say somebody believes in like New Age medicine and like crystals for healing, and they do that to convince people from not going to the doctor about a serious medical problem. Yeah, that you should come down on that stuff 100%, because then they're kind of directly, yeah, I'd say they're directly harming, it's sort of in between directly and indirectly, causing actual harm to people. So then, yeah, I mean, it's steering them away from something. So yeah, that would be a good example of something where, no, that kind of shouldn't be tolerated. Now, if you want to attribute the crystals to good vibes or your emotional state, okay, that's fine. You know, that's something where a lack of or if you avoid science, what known science says on the issue, that this isn't going to cause great harm to you, then I think it's fine. But if it is, then yeah, you kind of need to get them a little more forceful on that. So, okay, so, plus well, I mean, not in that example. There's a lot of things people can believe that, you know, we're not 100, they can't entirely be proven either, or the results are inconclusive. So yeah, so if you have something inconclusive, but one person is like 100% all the way on, no, this definitely happens. It's like, okay, well, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, and we won't know for 20 or 30 years. You know, it's, or maybe we won't ever know. So, all right, I'm gonna skip some more since it's been going a while. So asking, do I think cavemen were happy. Yeah, probably at times. Probably pretty happy. They're probably pretty happy. And they probably had a lot of misery too. So it just depends on. Still humans. So okay, well, I'll answer this one quick. They're asking about. They're roughly asking about the comparison of. I think Doom 2016. I don't know if they specify which one. Against the Serious Sam soundtracks. I think Serious. Yeah, I think I kind of agree with what they're saying. I think Serious Sam's soundtracks have a big. There's a big range where some of the stuff I think is just amazing and beautiful or fantastic, and other stuff it's kind of like, this isn't that great, you know. And Doom, I think, it has more consistent good music, but doesn't have the same range as Serious Sam. So, have I played Far Cry 2? If I have, what are my thoughts on it? Not really. I only played like 20 minutes or half an hour. And the two things that turned me off from it, well, three things. The biggest one was I hate the tint filter where everything's brown. And Far Cry 2 is a big offender of those. I mean, Far Cry 1, tropical island, nice vibrant colors, great graphics for the time, still great art direction now. Far Cry 2, let's smear brown over everything. And it's just like, yeah, let's not have, because, yeah, it takes place in Africa, but Africa still has color. I mean, you know, you have like the savannah, especially if you get to the evening, you know. Okay, so that might have been the biggest reason. The second was I was not liking the malaria mechanic. I don't like, except for some exceptions maybe, I don't like games that kind of nag you to do things. Like you know how there's like some games that they're kind of like you're supposed to like raise a pet or something? That's like the opposite of what I like in games. I hate that. I want to go at my own pace with things. If you want to speed up my pace, then do it through more different ways. Like, you know, a building's on fire. I need to get out of there. Or there's gunfire coming at me. Or I need, you know, stuff like that. You know, herd me along that way. Don't just. And I didn't like I don't like constant upkeep of things where you're like on a schedule in games. And the third thing was no mutants. I mean, Far Cry 1, we have mutants, and I like that. And I liked not knowing everything all these mad scientists were up to. Whereas Far Cry 2, they were trying to make it more believable and got rid of the sci-fi element. And I was thinking, that was a disappointment to me. So I kind of gave up on it early for those reasons. I mean, I might play it if they fixed the color and I have a mod to turn off the malaria upkeep, but I don't know. There's a lot of games now. Let's see. Okay, lost my spot. What do you think about making a game versus making a movie? Why making a movie is more satisfying for you? It might not be necessarily. It's just I have better inspiration for a movie. And I think to make a game, I have better inspiration and skill sets for making a movie. And I think to make a game, to make one I would really like, I think the workload might get astronomical. And I mean, maybe not. It's the sort of thing where if I spent a lot of time thinking about it, I probably could come up with a really awesome game design. But even then, like, I have to hire, like, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good, I haven't looked into that. Like, how much do you need to budget for art assets in an indie game? I guess it might be less now, because like in a movie, for the movie, I'm going to be able to use like a lot of existing stuff. I mean, I guess I could in a game if the game was free. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I could see. I haven't had the same sort of like lightning strike inspirations that I have for movies or video ideas for games. It's, but I'm sure if I brainstormed on it, I could come up with something awesome, or probably several things awesome. So, but I'm someone who doesn't need to take on more work at the moment. I want to like get more things accomplished, and then before I consider taking on more. So. Oh yeah, someone's asking like what kind of cameo would I want. I'm not really seeking cameos. I mean, I can maybe do them if people want me to, but that's not like that's not something like oh yeah, I wanted to. I'm in fact I'm fine if I'm just like buried, but cool stuff still happens. Oh well, this is a good question. I saw. What's a video game world you really want to go for a walk or a hike in, and that you love to drive or road trip through? There are hundreds. Like that's why with VR, I almost look at it as like my end game to gaming, where I've played through the game, I've enjoyed it, I've beaten it. Now I want to go walk through all of it and just like experience it like I live there. I made a quick list. Yeah, feel free to put suggestions in the chat for which ones you would want to walk through. I made a list of ones just off the top of my head. Remember Me, Destiny 2, Bulletstorm, Deus Ex, the original, Ghost Runner, Dark Souls. I haven't played it, but I just know I will. Cyberpunk 2077. This is one, with like the right camera mod, I think I might really, Grim Dawn. Because I wouldn't want it from isometric view. I'd want it like from ground level. And there are some camera hacks for that, but maybe not on the level I need. The Ascent, that's another one. Okay, someone's saying GTA 5. I haven't played yet, though. I probably will play it eventually, but LA is not my favorite place in the world, so I'm probably not dying for that one. I mean, I'm sure the game's a lot of fun, but the setting is. That's been part of the reason I haven't played it sooner. And the others, Bioshock Infinite was one I wanted, because that is a fantastic setting. Yeah, maybe Subnautica be another one, but there's a lot of games. Look, this is just like a top list off the top of my head. Again, there are hundreds. Like I love like cool game worlds. So, and that's the biggest appeal of virtual reality for me. Let's see. Yeah, and there is a mod for the Ascent to see it in either like on ground level, and it looked really impressive. That game has a ridiculous amount of detail for an isometric game. The game should not need that much detail for what it is, but they did it anyway. Like, in fact, I think I would have enjoyed that game more if I'd played it with this a first-person shooter, even. Okay, let's see. Okay, I didn't. Are we either going to get another game dungeon revisit? Yes. I don't know if I want to promise the one right after the next game dungeon, but it's absolutely my intention to have one this year. So, and I'll try to cover a bunch of stuff, and I think it'll probably be a more fun one than the last one. Let's see. I didn't see this question. Let's see. They're asking about Assassin's Creed Shadows. Apparently it's historically accurate, but based off of fan fiction. Well, I mean, as long as it's historically accurate. I mean, what do you think Assassin's Creed is? You think that's not historical fiction? So if they're basing it off other historical fiction, I don't think that's a problem. But they're saying it might not be accurate. Well, yeah, if it's not accurate, it could be a scandal for some people. I'm not that interested in that one. Assassin's Creed, it's like, I don't know. I'm way more interested in some parts of the world than others, and some time periods than others. So like the last Assassin's Creed I've been interested in playing has been Syndicate, because that one takes place in Victorian England. And I was saying, yeah, I'm interested in that setting. I like that one. Not that interested in ancient Egypt. Not that interested in Viking times. I think a new one's like the ancient Middle East. It's like I kind of need more fantasy. I can be, but I kind of want fantasy for that. So. Okay, somebody's asking about Freeman's Mind. It's unfortunately back of the line right now because of all the other stuff going on. I'm gonna skip a few more. Okay, I wanted to answer this one because this person brought up so many things here. Okay, when it comes to getting an answer for the fight against destroying games, sadly, when you probably don't get the best outcome on it. Sorry, it just seems like the best you'll get is them offering refunds, honestly, or it being stuck in legal limbo. Obviously not on the books. Will you pursue to get others or pursue totally legal ways to save games instead, or just hope others will do what they can to preserve gaming? Okay, I mean no offense when I say this, but you don't know what you're talking about on a couple levels. I think you're probably basing this, like, I think I know what you're doing, which is to, based on how you see it, you don't need to wait for all the evidence to come in to kind of call it early. And I completely understand that impulse. However, I think I'm closer to the source on this than you are and know more about what's happening legally than you. And I'm seeing, I have no idea for most of these countries. In fact, I think even for France, like if you force me to choose, like let's say I had to make a bet on this, whether it'll be successful or not. If I had to, based on the preponderance of evidence, I would say I think we win. However, that's like a 51% chance versus 49% chance. You know, it's those kind of odds is the way I look at it. I think you would have to be someone in government, like in the consumer agencies, to really accurately say that this is kind of a foregone conclusion, it's not going to work, and for each country. Because I think what he's basing this on is like probably the last video where we showed the EU was basically not wanting to answer this question. And they were kicking it to the countries because they can. And also maybe the UK, where they tried to avoid this, but then the actual petitions committee said this answer wasn't good enough, and then whoops, it's all shut down and there's a new parliament anyway. So the UK, it's like they tried to dodge it and then they tripped and fell down the stairs, and now we're wondering, well, wait, what happened now? Like, so it's like we're gonna have to try again to get a clear answer what's happening. So that's the thing. That's the other part where I thought you didn't know what. Again, I don't mean this like to offend you or anything, but I think you don't know what you're talking about with the stuck in legal limbo. Look, that's the one thing I'm basically promising is not happening from this campaign, is we're ending it one way or the other. So if it comes out and says, no, you cannot own your games, go to hell, okay, well then we've gotten a government or governments to say that, so there's no point in pursuing it past that. So that's what I'm trying to get is clear answers. So so we're gonna know if we've lost or not. Now it might take some time. Like I could see an upper end of 2 years, honestly. Hopefully not, but we won't have to do stuff for that 2 years though. That's the good part. That's more what I'm aiming for, is getting to the finish line for me, and then the rest of the stuff can just be like the gears turning that we set into motion, and we don't have to keep doing stuff past a certain point. So, yeah, I get, okay, so my opinion, my opinion right now is, Brazil, I'm not optimistic because I think we really need those statistics on how many copies of The Crew there were, and if we don't get them, it sounds like maybe the case doesn't get off the ground. That's like a core component to get the case. So If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Canada, I'm not optimistic on, just seeing the UK response, and I'm thinking it might be too radical for them. However, I think I'm gonna try hard to at least get a clear answer from them. But the UK, I'm slightly not optimistic. I'm not optimistic on a full solution. I'm slightly not optimistic on the expiration date solution also. But the way they handled it kind of pissed me off because it's like, and because we're not getting a clear answer. If they're just going to say no, go to hell because this law says they can do this, the end, get out of here, then okay, we know. But they're leaving openings. So it's like, I need to close these up because we have 2 openings still in the UK. We have the Competition and Markets Authority and we have the petition. Now, the petition, I am not optimistic on that changing law, but I think there's a real chance it could force clear answers, which is half the battle in this. Now, France, I have no idea. And even in France, we have multiple avenues going. So even if one just fails dead outright, there's still the other 2, I think. So France is a fog. And again, if I was forced to bet on it, I'd be optimistic, but that's a very, very weak optimism. So I don't know. The European Citizens Initiative, that is another complete unknown to me because the European Union tried to dodge this, essentially. Whereas if we're coming at them with the initiative, they're forced to they can't really dodge it. They have to either say yes or no. Or, but the big unknown with the initiative is the signatures. That's going to be hard. I have no idea if we can get that many signatures. Germany, that's another unknown. Like, I'm more pessimistic on Germany than France, but it's like we've definitely gotten the attention of the Verbraucherzentrale. I might be mispronouncing it again. So I think we're going to get a clear answer from Germany. So, and then Australia, another big unknown. However, Australia was already planning to go after the games industry. And with the law firm pushing the formal complaint, and I've told them about that article also, about maybe they can talk to the right people and get them to piggyback our issue on top of that, in which case it's off to the races. So, I mean, it'll take a while. They'll probably take at least a year with Australia. But, yeah, so there's way too many unknowns here. So I think your assessment on this is incorrect. I think you would have to be a government insider, working at the consumer agency for like 10 years or something to be able to kind of call this and say it's not going to work or you don't think it's going to work. Because we just don't have the information to work off of. So, and the rest of your question, let's see. Will you pursue to get others to pursue totally legal ways to save games instead, or just hope others will do what they can to preserve gaming? I think, no, well, I think this is it for our chance to do it legally. Like, the only way, if this fails, then it's going to be like how it was before we started, which is some developers are cool and let you keep their game, or maybe if you ask, they do it. A lot aren't, or publishers, I guess, more than developers. And some will continue leaking code. I mean, a lot won't. And I think this might get worse and worse. I think the only hope, if this all fails, is creating mimics of the games in question using AI to extrapolate the assets. So like, it looks at the footage, it starts recreating that map from the footage, and then you can port that into something like Unreal, and then you put in the basic mechanics manually, or maybe AI assist with that later in the future too. And so the more complex the game, the harder that is. But if it's like a real basic kind of game, then you might get something kind of similar. But I mean, to me, that's the only option left. So no, I'm not gonna like encourage people like try, but like there's not gonna be a try again on my end, except the UK, because that was just, we didn't. They just hit a giant reset button. So it's like, oh, okay, so we didn't get a, like I'm not gonna try again if there's no chance, but if it's just, yeah, the UK was an odd situation. Or if Brazil magically came up with the stats we need or found a way around it, then yeah, sure, try again. But I'm not going to try again against something that's already failed and shows no sign of being successful trying it again. So no, I'm moving on after that. So I just have to deal with it. I mean, that's what's always, well, I mean, the biggest part is destroying games themselves. But the part that's always driven me crazy is that this is essentially a coup by everybody sitting down and just letting it happen. Like, so it's not that we tried really hard, but we just couldn't do it. No, it's like we sat there and they mostly have moved in and tried to take it from us. And it's just like, I kept wishing somebody would do something about this. And it's just dumb luck that enough as a line that I'm able to do it. I wish it was somebody else, because I'd rather be doing more fun stuff or more interesting things. And God, I have no love of interpreting the law. But yeah, okay, I lost my train of thought on it. But oh yeah, I might even use this in a future video. Yeah, short spoiler. I'm using some footage from Star Trek II in the next game dungeon. I was skimming through parts of it, and there's one scene where Kirk was talking about, I think it was, the Kobayashi Maru. He says, well, it had the advantage of having never been tried before. And I was thinking, yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. I mean, not cheating the system, but he's trying something that's never been tried before. And that's exactly the mentality I'm taking. So, yeah, I may use that clip later again. All right. So, yeah, I think you have the wrong perception on this, and you're calling, even if you're 100, you're not going to be right on the legal limbo stuff, but even if you're completely right on your conclusion, it's pure dumb luck and you were guessing, because the evidence just isn't there. So unless you actually work within the DGCCRF or the ACCC or, the Verbraucherszentrale. So. Okay, I'm gonna skip some more. Okay, they're asking if I've tried the Deus Ex mods, like the total conversions, like Zodiac's Nihilum. Did any of those come close to the feeling of the original Deus Ex for you? Well, let's see. The only one I've played through was it 2027? And yes, it had a lot of, it felt like an expansion pack. Like it felt to Deus, if Deus Ex had received an expansion, it felt kind of like that. Like it wasn't quite up to the same par, but it had like good music, good atmosphere, some moments. The gameplay was competent enough, new settings. So yeah, I absolutely want to play some of the total conversions. Although I want to wait till for colder weather. Deus Ex just feels like a colder weather game to me. I don't know why. So I guess because everybody's wearing trench coats, No, I absolutely want to play more of the total conversions. Okay, I'll answer this quick. Is it possible there will be more machinima videos like Civil Protection or Stranger Than Need? Yes, it's 100% possible. That's what the movie's going to be, essentially. And it's what I'm really would like to get back to. But problem is, it's not so profitable. That's the problem. So I kind of have to carve time out of my existing time treading water to get to it, which has slowed me down a lot. What are your thoughts on Axiom Verge 2, since you considered the first game to be fantastic? I thought it was pretty good. I didn't like it as much as the first one. It didn't quite have the same sort of spark, but I mean, it's a good game. Okay, I'm going to skip some more because I've been going on too long. I know the Linux one just soaked up the time on it. Okay, well, I'll try this on the fly. And I'll answer the... Okay, this isn't going to be so good on the fly, but... You have... Okay, the statement is, Ross, do your best Australian accent. So I'll try to read the next question and my on-the-fly Australian accent, so not prepare for it. Do you have any new thoughts on virtual reality, or if things still not progressed far enough for you? Or if things still not progressed far enough for you? That part's weak. I know it needs work. I personally have been I can't, man, I need to practice. Yeah. I personally have been dipping my toes into the MetaQuest 2 and really enjoyed Outer Wilds and Half-Life 2 modded into VR. You can tell it's weak. I've got it down like 30% or something. Like I can hear it's wrong in parts. So I would need to study and practice. I could do it, but no. Okay, so for that question, my biggest, I think we're damn close with VR. It's just like I keep waiting for the final inch. What I want from VR compared to my current headset is basically higher resolution, which we have now. I'm pretty sure the resolutions that I'd be totally happy with now. And higher field of view, which we don't. And, okay, yeah, higher resolution, higher field of view, and not having some big other complications that detract from it. And so far, there's nothing in the market that has that. All three of those. So like the experience on mine is generally pretty great. I just want a little more. I have the Samsung Odyssey Plus. I want higher field of view, high resolution. There are lots of them now out with higher resolution and good experience otherwise, but not the field of view. They all seem to be a little bit smaller than what I want. And I found that has a big impact on the immersion for me. So I'm just waiting for something with like a little bit higher that is a high resolution. Now, Pimax seems to be the only game in town that has that, but a lot of Pimax stuff is a little wonky from what I've heard. And I think they depend on the lighthouses, the current generation, which I've heard can emit like this really high-pitched frequency that you may not hear, but might still drive you a little crazy. In which case, I'm thinking, geez, if it wasn't for that, I might have caved and gone for a Pimax already. Now the Pimax 12K, which they announced like freaking 2 or 3 years too early, I think might be the one. And if it has that, then great. That's my headset for as long as I can ride it out. But who knows if that's going to come out, and who knows if that's not going to have a significant problem. Yeah, that's actually the thing I'm wondering. It's like if I had to pick something else to upgrade from this, what would it be? Because this has no screen door effect, really. I mean, I just can't even notice it. So no screen door effect, high resolution, and as high a field of view as is possible for the competitors out there. Those would be the three big things. So, and not having big problems with something else like drift. Oh, I would not want drift. But yeah, as for software, I'm super excited about it because I'm frequently hearing of mods people have made towards existing kind of AAA games to get VR working. And yeah, Road to VR has a lot of those, roadtovr.com. So I'm just, I'm looking forward to it. So, let's see. You're predominantly a PC gamer. Were there ever consoles you were considered buying? Well, I did get an original Game Boy because that was kind of different because it was mobile. So, there wasn't a competitor really for it. But it's console I considered buying. I'm trying to think. I mean, I was on the fence on a Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo, it's not really. And then I think as I got older, I didn't really want the console, but I wanted the games. So it's like, yeah, there were console exclusives I wanted to play. And then as time went on, sometimes you get emulation. So it's like, oh, maybe if I keep waiting, there'll be more emulation. So that's the thing. And now we're kind of getting there with a lot of games like that. So. Okay, I'm going to skip some more. Stuff I don't have great answers for, or else I don't, even if I did have good answers, I wouldn't have. Okay, geez, this is a good question. They're saying they read The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, and I remember the general plot, but they're saying that final section, damn, that final sentence, I don't remember the final sentence. I remember the basic plot is that everybody has a good time because this one person's made to suffer in the closet, or the kid. And they're saying, what's my take on the short story? Well, or how did I hear of it? I think I heard from it from like an English class in middle school or high school. But my take on it, maybe I need to reread it. But like when I was reading it, I didn't get it. Like, I mean, I understand, or else I thought it was like a bad example, because it's like, I can understand the concept of one person suffering so everybody else is okay, but in this case, it was too metaphorical for me. I mean, not necessarily to get it, but like, I couldn't, I felt like it was a bad metaphor, because it's like, well, wait a minute, if everything's so perfect in this town, why is that all dependent on just keeping this person in the closet? Like, that seems unnecessarily cruel and unrelated to the happiness of everybody else. And those are my memories. It's been a long time since I've read it. And it's what? It didn't feel like, I just like, this seems entirely unnecessary. Now, but let's say we had an example where one person's suffering is necessary for everyone else. Well, okay, I guess I'm spoiling a bit of the next episode. Star Trek II. Example I'm pulling is Spock sacrifices himself to save everybody on the Enterprise. So that is an example of one person suffering so that everybody else can be okay. I mean, these scenarios are rare, in my opinion. So the way I look at those, I think this is what makes me maybe not like a true utilitarian, or I don't know if that even is a thing. Maybe I just have flawed perception of it, is I don't think people should have to like sacrifice in like a really extreme way to even if it makes the majority happy. Except it's like, yeah, I think there should always be some level of voluntary aspect to that, where because another example I was thinking was, what was the name of that movie? It was by Catherine Bigelow. She was the director. Was it U-271 or something? Yeah, it had Harrison Ford and Liam Neeson. Well, it was based off a real event where there was a nuclear sub and there was a leak in it, and there were soldiers or sailors, I guess, that were ordered in to repair it, even though it probably cost them their lives. Or I guess there's a similar, I guess Chernobyl has some similarities to that. And I was thinking, because that kind of helped save the rest of the crew to stay alive, at least what I remember of it. But let's say for sake of argument, that's the case. Well, in those cases, I was thinking, well, that would be immoral, except that that's kind of what you sign on for when you join the military. So it's like if obviously no one would ever want to do that, but you can kind of make the argument that there's no, I guess there's a few people that like they're kind of might be forced into it because they don't have any other options, but then it's a question of like how much do you want to, and there is some immorality to it, but there's also a lot of utilitarian good from that, where you have a minority essentially sacrificing themselves to save the majority. I don't think that should be mandatory pretty much under any scenario. However, if some scenarios are extreme enough, you should use volunteers for that, or try to motivate them as much as you possibly can if the situation is dire enough. And again, the situations like this are pretty rare, where it's like, okay, we're gonna sacrifice or make, not even kill necessarily, but make destitute certain people in exchange for prosperity of others. Now that happens all the time in the real world, but I don't think that's moral. So and I think that's something that should be tried to, what's the word I want? Not, I guess, negate or undo as much as possible, or try to dismantle as much as possible. And because it's not a one-to-one thing too, because like I think the bottom floor is for like what people, like you should, like in my opinion, everyone should be able to eat. Everyone should be able to like drink clean water, breathe clean air, have a place to live, and like basically not be subject to some sort of tortured existence. I guess that part's more interpretive. Now beyond that, there's a lot of room. So let's say you lose your, let's say millions of people, the only way we can make life not destitute for lots of others is for millions of people to lose a lot of their prosperity. Okay, well, then that's the right thing to do, and that's what we should do, as long as it doesn't go below those levels I mentioned. Or I guess you could argue medical care as much as it's available. That's another one that I'll put on the list. So I think there's like some things, I think there's like a bottom floor we shouldn't go under any scenario as long as we have the resources for it. But anything above that, it's like we should try to do whatever makes as most people as possible like in a good state, a reasonably good state. So yeah, in the case, so an example, the ones who walk away from Omelas, well, if all this prosperity depends on locking this person in a closet for life, well then no, that's too far, because that would fall under the tortured existence thing, because that's unethical, I would think. But if it was, yeah, I think you guys maybe get what I'm saying. So it's what? Yeah, it's because some people, I guess what I'm saying is some people, like let's say I can never use a computer again, but because of that we end world hunger. Like me and so just pretend those are connected. Well, that would suck for me, but that's not as important as people not starving, is the way I look at it. Like, again, I'm a huge fan of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So like the stuff at the bottom, like the first two rungs, like, basic needs and security, those outweigh everything else. That was the way I see it, except under incredibly fringe scenarios, I would think. So like some people see like, oh, okay, I'm trying to think of an example off the spot. Like, see, some people interpret any reduction in lifestyle as like, okay, that's completely unethical because I had this, now I don't. Well, to me, it depends. Well, why? What's the use? Like maybe it's not that I can't have a computer, but it's that we can't have devices that use this much energy or something for anything that's not essential. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, that, or we can't, or we have to stop producing computers because they're depleting too many resources we need for other devices, or it's causing too much environmental devastation. It's like, okay, well, that's a good reason. And then we basically need to confiscate your computer because we need it to run, we need it to manage a nuclear reactor or something, and that's going to help a lot more people. And this is, we're so low on resources, this is the only way we can do it. It's like, yeah, that sucks, but that's what should be done, is the way I look at it. So, and I think some people just look at it like anything that means giving up what I have is like, no, this is completely unacceptable, therefore it's immoral. And plus, that can also work the other way, where that's where the example I talk about could just be a story. And the reality is there is no actual reason to take my computer. It's just politics. And they're doing this because that serves some other end to, let's say, because they want to get everybody on the new computer. And I'm still a holdout, so they have to take mine. And so, yeah, then it's just not even a valid reason. So, yeah, there can be dimensions to this. But no, I feel like the highest, again, I'm repeating some of what's going to come out in the next game dungeon, but there's so much in it, I don't mind repeating it. I kind of see the highest priority is the continued survival of humanity in a non-torturous way. So I see everything flowing down from that. So, okay, should finish up some more questions. Let's see. Let's see. Oh yeah, well, somebody's talking about putting a sticker on the games that are good versus bad. I think I'm just simplifying this a lot. I don't think that will work. I think the only there's only one thing I think really works, but there's two things that might maybe work. And that's, one thing is just require publishers to leave the game in a playable state when they shut it down, you know, in some fashion. I think that's the only thing that solves this. Now, the two others that are iffy, and they get increasingly iffy, one is an expiration date on any game that will not does not let you play it indefinitely. So, and a hard date. So not saying, oh, this game may shut down, or hey, this game requires essential. No, just this game this game will cease working, or this game expires after January 1st, 2028, or something like that. If it says that, I think that might carry enough psychological baggage to really put an end to this. And the other one, which I think is even iffier, is if you can return, is when these games shut down, you can return any game like this for full price that you paid for it, and it's not that difficult. So in other words, even then, I'm not sure that will end it, but that might get enough traction so that everybody playing an online game, if they're diligent, they can play them all for free permanently. Then, I mean, I guess minus inflation. Then if enough people got wind of that and enough people start doing that, that might be an incentive for companies to just say, why don't we just release an end-of-life patch so we can keep all the money, you know? Like, that one's way iffier. So put it like this, and I'll also say this, I'd say if we don't get anything in the first two things I mentioned, either a requirement or else an expiration date, then I consider the campaign a failure, at full stop. And now we'll know that the only thing I got out of it was no more nagging doubts. I just know. So, because anything less, it's like, they won't save games, so I don't care. So I'm very black and white on this. You know, either the games are being destroyed or they're not. Like not oh, games are lasting, or you know, we get a minimum of 2 years for the games. Like whatever, they're still dead at the end of it. So okay, I'm skipping some more. So I was asking if I've seen good cosplayers. I'm not sure I've seen any, though I've seen real world 80s style punks since I moved here. So I've seen more people dressed like, I've seen more punks here than I have in like the actual 80s. But that could have to be in the location because I wasn't in like a major city when I grew up in the 80s. How would you feel about spending the rest of your life at sea singing shanties after completing your life goals? That sounds like hell to me, because I could see sea travel being fun for a little while, but after that, it's just endless ocean, you know? So, I mean, sea travel would be nice for like a few days or maybe a few weeks as an experience. But then, yeah, no, that would get tired fast. And then I don't really care for sea shanties. So it's... That would be a lesser hell for me. Okay, I'll cover this one quick. Your opinions on the first two Terminator and Alien movies are well documented. What do you think about the later ones? Yeah, so I think the second of both of those are just amazing movies, just by every metric. I think Terminator's easier. Terminator just kind of seems to go downhill more and more. like Terminator 3, I thought was like, it was more of like a dumb fun movie. It has good scenes, but it's like doesn't have like the punch that the others do. But no, there's fun parts in it. Terminator, Salvation, that one had good scenes, but it wasn't as fun, and I unfortunately had it spoiled for me by watching the trailer. So it was just kind of like, so stuff. But there were some cool ideas in there with like the new bots, and we're already in the apocalypse. Yeah, Terminator 3, somebody says Terminator 3 has the best destruction. Man, that fire truck scene's just incredible in Terminator 3. But that was kind of the best scene though. Let's see, what was next? Was Genesis next? Genesis, I didn't like that one much. That one felt like super pandering, and like the story wasn't that great. Though I will say that's one of the most amazing examples of crossing the uncanny valley I've ever seen. That part where they're showing young Arnold there, I was looking, I saw zero uncanny valley. I had zero uncanny valley feelings, except maybe the part at the end where he runs at him. But yeah, with her face, it's just like, yeah, your clothes, give them to me. You know, like, I would have thought that's him. So, I mean, and I'm someone who's like, has some sensitivity to uncanny valley stuff. So I heard it took them like a year to do that shot, or like that scene. But so yeah, that was incredible CGI. I'll put a link to that. I probably have linked to it before. That was one of the most, from a special effects standpoint, that's a landmark scene in my opinion. And it was a new one, Dark Fate or something. I forget the name of it. That one just felt kind of like, it's all right. I mean, it's like, it's not horrible, but it's just like, I didn't really care about the characters so much. That one feels tired. That's what that one feels like. It just feels like, okay, let's kind of roll out this stuff again. Let's kind of roll out a similar plot again. And we're just kind of going through the paces, except we don't have the like good writing and the good one-liners of the original or the energy. It's just, I've heard there's a term in software and probably in movies too, minimum viable product. That's what unfortunately a lot of movies feel like that to me now. But and it's not just me getting older, because when I watch movies I've never seen before, like from the 80s or 90s, I'll be like, oh wow, this has kind of an interesting, or like this has a charm to it, or this has like a really interesting plot, or oh yeah, I'm really, these characters are really interesting, or this, and I just don't get that feeling from a lot of modern movies. I mean, not all of them, but like the ratio is way too high for my taste. Because if it was just me getting older, then I'll be like, oh yeah, it's 80s movies, it's great, yay. And yeah, there's kind of crappy movies in the 80s too, but they just don't, they don't feel a solace, I guess. There's a lot of them. Okay, so yeah, Terminator just seems to be getting worse and worse, in my opinion. It's like a complete downhill slope after 2. Aliens has been better. It's like 3 was probably the low water mark for me. I didn't care much for 3 because it's too small scale, too dramatic. A lot of people suffering, not as scary. 4 was kind of like 3, Terminator 3, and that it's 4 is more the dumb fun one, and it was trying to give ideas. It's not nearly the kind of craft thing as Aliens, but it's oh yeah, what was it? Resurrection. There were fun ideas in there, and it was just it's trying to be a good time for so that one's fair. What's after that? I guess, well, the Aliens versus Predator movies, those were bad. Okay, so yeah, those might be arguably worse than 3, but I don't know if people count those. The Prometheus, I thought was pretty. I was lucky and went in completely blind, not only not seeing the trailer, not even realizing it was an Aliens movie, and it didn't fully click until the very end of the movie when I saw the xenomorph. Because I was thinking while I was watching the movie, this movie's kind of copying a lot from Alien, you know? I was thinking that, but it didn't click because I didn't remember the name of Wayland Corporation, you know? So Prometheus has very huge plot holes, but it's a good movie, is my opinion. But like, it's interesting, has great cinematography, has great build-up, good acting, like incredible atmosphere, and like the plot's interesting, and I'm not sure where they're gonna go with it. Yes, it has very dumb plot holes. It also has that, but I'd rather watch that than the inverse. You know, of no plot holes, but like no interesting stuff at all. And then the Prometheus does something that I think should be a gold standard for prequels, and that a prequel is usually not that good because you know how it's going to end. Like the characters are going to be alive, and it just kind of leads into the movie or the plot you already know. Prometheus introduces a new element of the engineers and just runs off to the side with that. And then now you're wondering, well, wait, what's going on there? I want to know more about that. And so that's a completely novel element introduced into a prequel. And I have nothing but respect for that. And I think that's how prequels should work to keep you interested. Because I don't want to see something that just connects the dots from everything I know about already. It needs to be its own thing if you're making a prequel that introduces. You want to not know how elements of this end or even conclude. And I thought Covenant had equally great cinematography and atmosphere, but it's a little less mysterious and kind of felt depressing almost. But I haven't watched the trailer to the new one. Was it Romulus? I'll almost certainly watch it unless everybody says it's terrible. Because like with the newer Alien movies, I'm getting the feeling like, yeah, try again, try again. Like, you know, like I feel like there's potential there. Like I think what Aliens needs the most is more novel elements. Like we go to a new planet where there's like a new alien race, or the aliens have mutated into something really weird now, or they're developing an intelligence and they're not personifying it. Like, again, like I mentioned earlier, like something really alien. Like we need more questions being raised in the aliens world. I think they have to expand it. Is because if they just keep copying the alien is there and we have a bug hunt that kills some people, well, that's kind of boring. I think so. Yeah, so Alien has a lot of potential. Terminator, they need to get some serious writers in there to salvage it, I think. And I think it could be done because Terminator can kind of do whatever it wants with the timeline, but you need to, it kind of has the same problem where you can't just keep repeating the first movie or the first two movies, really. You need something much more fresh, I think. Because yeah, they have new elements, but they don't. They're copying way too much. So, and then they're not as good at it too. Yeah, Genesis, where they're kind of going through the other stuff that already happened. That one felt so pandering to me. I'm just like, come on, guys, this isn't. I kind of like movies standing as their own thing, you know. All right. Did Ross see Dial of Destiny? No, I haven't. And I still haven't seen Kingdom of the Crystal Skull because everybody says they're both terrible. And if it was a really weird movie, like let's say Being John Malkovich, that's a weird movie. That movie is not for everybody. If some people were saying that movie's awful, but then some people are saying no, it's cool, I might still be inclined to check it out. But Indiana Jones, these are movies everybody should like. Yeah, so if everybody's saying, if the vast majority of people are saying, no, these movies suck, like I don't need to see it. I mean, and the problem is, I can watch bad movies if they're kind of fun, but this is like, it's almost like, well, the earlier Indiana Jones movies are so good, like I kind of don't want to see it just flopped around like that and just kind of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's just kind of like cheapen the whole thing. Like, you know, it's like, well, I'd rather not have the really bad associations with it. Okay, so somebody's saying they thought it was okay. Well, we'll see. All right, more questions. I think we're getting towards the end here. Or we better be. All right, let's see. Yeah, we're getting, okay, so I think there's a question I missed, but I don't remember. Okay, so you can start asking live questions at Ross Broadcast in the chat. I'll try to answer some more. What was the one I missed? Because I was thinking, oh yeah, I have an answer for this, and then I guess it never came up, and then now I forget what it is. Do fan comments, questions, or emails ever inspire jokes in your videos? Very rarely. Like, I admit freely to stealing Earth for Earthlings. I love that one. So sorry if I didn't give you credit for that, but it's in the video somewhere. So you have the evidence to prove it's you. But yeah, I love that one. Sometimes, I mean, if I feel like somebody has like a valid criticism that I was kind of not thinking of, and it's something that I thought was like a weak spot, yeah. Or if somebody says something really funny, then yeah, that might flow its way into it. But the one I can think of that I straight up ripped off fans was the Earth for Earthlings. That was great. Like, oh yeah, for fan questions. Oh yeah, sometimes if I feel like they brought up a really interesting point that I wanted to cover, that sort of thing. I mean, there'll be more fan stuff in the follow-up. So I'm saying watch that new Mad Max movie. Yeah, I plan to. I haven't heard it's bad, so. What do you mean Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is bad? It's 77% are positive. I haven't even looked at the ratings. I was just going by word of mouth, and just everybody who likes Indiana Jones, and I like Indiana Jones. So, Oh, that's right. Okay. How good are you at doing a Brooklyn accent or a slight German accent? Oh, Brooklyn accent. Okay. I'll read some of one of the questions I didn't really answer. What? See, I'm much better if I have a prompt, but I mean, like of hearing it first. Yeah. So I'll just copy Jerky Boys, I guess. One of the ideas for an end-term goal, stop killing games, is to put a sticker on games that can be killed. Have you thought about an opposite? That's probably not very good. Slightly German. Well, okay, you already guessed one. I'm almost considering like limiting it to like one question per person in the future, but have you considered using reshade for the? I have for some games, but what I found is it's difficult to completely undo that. To undo the tinning. Like I did use that some, I think, for Human Revolution. There's one I've used reshade on a few games, or the worst is when they tint it brown for like one level and then it's tinted teal for another level and gray for another level. Like, oh man, like what are you gonna do then? I think that's the sort of thing AI might do a really good job at, though. Okay, somebody that has a morbid question. Do you have a plan to have your channel be continued if you were to die? I'm not worried about anything after I'm dead. That's. I mean, I could maybe for people who are directly affected by me, I could do a couple plans like to quote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, life is for the living. That's how I feel. So, I mean, what would be the point if because you can just go to another channel from somebody who's alive. So, yeah, it's also I kind of okay. Here's something controversial. I kind of unless it's something kind of tangential where it's like the family cares about it, I have zero respect for the wishes of the dead. Like they're dead. What do they care? Like if somebody insisted something be done. I mean, unless it was like a contract or something, like you paid for them to be buried in this plot or something, or yes. So or like if the family really cared about that because they know they would have wanted that, it's like, well, who cares? They're dead. Like do whatever is best for the living. Like I feel that way, like 100%, basically. But yeah, but if you did something that people found really upsetting, it's really the other people that you're taking into consideration. But yeah, it's not everybody has that approach, but that's mine. Like I do not care at one bit about respecting the wishes of the dead unless it makes sense for the living too. So I'm saying, would you respect somebody's will then? Well, I respect laws for the most part because it has a lot of problems if you don't. But I mean, for the will, yeah, I guess so, because what you're doing is because the heirs care about that too. So if you're seizing it and the heirs want it, well, they were close to the deceased. Yeah, that involves the living. Now, there are questions about, well, maybe there should be limits on that because, like, if somebody's like a billionaire or something, does that mean the heirs get, like, everything and then you just kind of keep a dynasty going? And then maybe it's better for society not to do that and the heirs can only get, like, up to a certain point or something? I don't know. I mean, I think there is legitimacy to that argument, but it devil's in the details. But yeah, that's. But besides, if what you really should do then, if you wanted that, is just have the people with the will bequeath it before they're deceased, and then get out of it that way. But okay, any interested in light gun games? Yeah. Oh, you mean like on a modern system? Maybe, but I think VR would just trump it completely. I mean, because then you know, if the appeal is to feel like you're shooting at something, you know, because you're holding a controller and pointing at something in real 3D space, I think it's just kind of it takes some of the it takes some of the thunder out of light gun games. But you know, if I was stuck somewhere and there was a light gun game in front of me, sure, I'd play it. I mean, it's still fun, but I think VR would be a lot better. If I could bring back a dead game, what would it be? Well, since the crew might be on its way, thanks to the Crew Unlimited efforts, for me personally, the one dead one I'm probably most interested in would be Darkfall. But I mean, I'm sure there might be candidates people want more. I'm probably more concerned about like at-risk games than I am currently dead ones. But yeah, or maybe there's a better candidate I'm not thinking of. You're interested in Don't Escape 4 by Script Welder. I don't recognize the name. Do you know more about their other games? Oh, that might have been a game I just put on the games list where the initial pitch looks promising to me. So, yeah, I mean, that can happen sometimes, especially if it's like a Submachine and Daymare Town series. I guess I don't know those. They might be on my games list, though. I'll see. Daymare Town sounds familiar, though. There's another like Resident Evil knockoff that's Daymare something. Daymare 1999 or something like that. Have you heard of Scavenger's Reign? I've definitely heard of multiple games that use both those words. I don't know if it's together. Oh, okay, yes, I have. Okay, so this is a movie or a TV show or something. Yeah, that's on my to-watch list. This is why I keep lists, because I don't know the... Because I don't remember the name, but I figure like, oh yeah, this looks interesting. Write it down. Months, maybe a year, maybe years later, I get around to it. So much stuff is like that for me now. Yeah, I think there's. I'm trying to find the name of it. There was another series that I only found out about because somebody posted some meme, and the meme was so funny. I had to find out what this was from. Let's see, Moonbeam City. I plan to, yeah, I plan to check that out. Where the scene I saw from it was, you know how like it's like a cliche. Somebody would be hanging from a ledge, and somebody would be like trying to like peel off their fingers, or like to try to get them to fall. And what they were doing is somebody like tried, like I think they were like shooting at them or something, or attacking him, and then he would like move his finger when he shot, but then he fired more and more shots or attacks, and then he just started going like this, like he was playing a piano, just kind of moving back and forth rapidly along the ledge. I was thinking, okay, I want to see this. You know, I need to find out what show this is. So I haven't watched it other than that one scene, and it had kind of a cyberpunk setting. So I'm thinking, yeah, okay, this looks up my alley. All right, I think let's see, any more? Okay, there's a few more questions. Okay, no, it's just a reference to something else. Oh, they're talking about Adobe Flash games. Yeah, maybe. The thing with Flash is there was a lot of crap too. So with Flash is the sort of thing I might eventually get around to playing, like Best of the Best or something like that. You know, like a top 20 list or something like that, where. Yeah, because it varies. Well, they're saying they grew up with Flash. Well, then you know what I'm talking about. I mean, there's a million Flash games, so some of them are great, others not. So, somebody's talking about immigration question. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I was going to end it on Moonbeam City, so I figured that's a good place to stop with there because that looked more about what I'm about, which is wacky crap going on in a cyberpunk world. All right, so the promotion for the European Citizens Initiative, everyone who's eligible, I hope will sign it, or at least we can kind of spread the word on it. This is the last really big push on the campaign. Everything else is going to have either ongoing. The UK stuff we're probably going to have to relaunch. However, even that's not going to be as big as this. This is the last big thing we're doing on the campaign, and the other stuff is just ongoing. And then Game Dungeon as soon as I possibly can. So it's still days out, though. There's just so much to edit. And it's one of these where there's a lot, and it's not a simple edit. So I think there's enough content. It may as well be 2 episodes. So, yeah, I should get back to work. It's a good place to end it. So thanks for listening, and hopefully getting more back to normal videos as soon as I can. See ya.